Hey everybody, what's up? Tom here, back at you with another video. I'm just kind of getting everything situated. I know, not very professional, but you're getting to see the magic that happens behind the camera, so enjoy it. Okay. Audio. Um. Audio. Um. Connected.
Gruff?
Yep. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually fix my camera settings, although it looks pretty good right now. The focus, it's not in focus. And we want to have the exposure not constantly changing. But I think we go here. That looks pretty good. Need to angle this. There, like that. Gain comes down a little bit. I like a little cozier of a vibe here. And then, do we stick with auto white balance or nah? It always makes me yellow. $25.10. Yeah, I like $25.10. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so that's looking good. Now we do this, 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 this. And now we're actually good to go. Let me do a proper intro now. Heyo everybody, what's up? Tom here, back at you with another video. And, oh, they're cleaning up the cache. That's nice. So basically what we're going to do is I'm just trying to get through the campaign as fast as possible. I'm not like a fast campaign runner or anything. My best is like 8 hours and 5 minutes. And I've done it a lot. So I'm really not that good. But we're doing it on fresh start scenarios here. Where's my tactician? Oh, did I end up going mercenary? Or, I mean, did I end up going witch hunter? Yeah, I ended up going witch hunter. I had a pretty amazing helmet drop that gives me +1 to all skills. Like, that's insane. But yeah, we're trying to go through and do this shit as fast as humanly possible. Are these blues? Yes. Oh. So yeah, I did take the 50% longer to blow up, but do 1 extra grenade passive point. And so I just use flash grenades for like quick damage, and I use explosive shot, so it's pretty good damage to just fire a flurry of grenades and then explosive shot it. Oh, didn't I get oil grenade? And you see it's pretty good damage. Is this how I like it? Yeah. I do like this setup. Okay, maybe grenades are kind of clunky at times, especially early on, but... Oh my god, he just fucking...
Reloading.
Fucking annoying. Why do my grenades feel wrong?
What's this then?
The fuck? These bugs were supposed to be taken care of already. What, does this one know about the cup? This one's a smart bastard. Yes. Okay. Well, hopefully they don't keep coming because I've sprayed those fucking bugs enough already. So what's the other thing I need to still hit? I need to hit the
That's gonna come along.
Trial of Chaos.
I just know it.
I want to do that right now before I forget. Did I already hit the Trial of Chaos? No, I need to go to Chimera Wetlands. So what I like to do is just go the opposite direction. Okay, and you just hug the wall. Similar to hunting grounds. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I actually need to do something here. I've been putting this off for way too long. I just leveled up, so I can actually sell at the same time that I'm here. Am I level 33, actually? No. Ugh. I need to hit level 33, and then I get a lot more damage. What I want to do is refund passives.
Let's try something else.
There. 25% reduced grenade detonation time, which I have now. So that's actually going to be huge. The grenade detonation time was the thing that was fucking me. And I've got it taken care of now. I guess, oh, I have a regex.
Don't get eaten.
Okay, just jump back in.
Surprise!
Okay, let's not get knocked over. Because I'm pretty squish right now. What the fuck? Wait. So it's one of these side passages. Okay, I don't want to run Temple of Chaos right now because it might be too hard. I want to level up a little bit first. It's just how I roll. Do I even go for Sorcery Ward at this point? It only gives me a couple hundred life. And I'm losing a lot of
Oh, it's warm.
armor.
Why is it warm?
Because the other thing I'm thinking about is maybe unspecking out of the thing I have from Witch Hunter. And then when I get my second ascendancy, swapping to Tactician for the pin buildup,
Another notch on me helmet.
which is pretty nice. Okay, let's just run straight first, see if we find it.
I'll break ya.
Okay, just keep exploring more of the map, stuff that you haven't explored yet. Is this the way to Sanctum? I believe it is. Yep. Don't want to walk through those doors, though. I want to just hug this wall now. Hug the left wall. Oh, good. A soul core right on the way. I'm going to keep hugging the wall. Yep, we're right here.
Need a sec.
Okay. So.
take a rest.
Okay.
Ooh, ominous. Miss Valai'll know what this is about. Ladder up! Need a sec.
That's convenient. Still need to find one more soul core though.
This needs a soul core that's a bit bigger. Yee! Oh. Is it supposed to spark like that? Foul fool!
Feels like I'm not up to date on my life flask. Might be another life flask that I should be getting here. Okay, I just gotta go through here. Oh, that's 33. That is huge. So watch. 1389. 1620, that's without any sockets. And it's less skill levels. Meaning I'm more efficient on mana. Oh wait, I got my core, right? Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going back to... Fuck it. I'm just gonna run at this point. Here.
Bye-bye! We're getting somewhere now.
Okay. We also had these boots, which is more armor, right? 2 iron, perfect. I think I'm very unlikely to find something better than this. Didn't even need to check. I mean, this has 71% increased fizz. Okay. This is as good as you can hope for at this point in the game. I'm now doing 1751. Oh. Salvage. Salvage that shit. And we can throw that in the stash. ID this 1 to 24. Yeah, this is better.
Ooh, ominous. Miss Valle'll know what this is about.
The soul core is charged. Why don't you do the honors? Oh dear. Now we just have to remove it from that giant construct. Good luck.
Okay.
Called that one, didn't I?
And that's how it's done. No, actually, we're just going to go here. And you go straight to Infested Barrens.
At long last.
Okay, Madeline Waterways. Best zone in the game. Let's go.
Idiot. A carver driver here. This is gonna get noted.
So I am 6 levels below.
The first of many, no doubt.
6 levels below is pretty normal for this point in the campaign, though.
Blind him!
What? I was dodging.
Need more time.
Okay. Not bad, not bad. think I'd... See, that's the thing. Do you go for this first, or do you go for, I can never even find the other one. This one first. I feel like the damage is extra is really good. Because I'm shooting 4 different types of grenades regularly. So this is realistically 16% damage is extra fire. Like 12 to 16%. Yeah, let's go for that first. Strength.
Reload. Load.
Oh, I should be playing
Did
Live
he
and
mention
Learn.
anything about the details about why, the real reason he wouldn't release it? No. It seems that what he was trying to do is hide something that reflects poorly on him. And that wasn't said in the interview.
Well, I don't disagree with you on that. I do think the perception was that he was trying to hide something based on the way he responded to their questions. I think he shit the bed with that interview, just like Biden shit the bed in his debate with Trump. He did not handle that well. He did not answer the questions well. He did not he did not give the credence to their concerns like he should have. And so I agree with you, Pisco, that his answers were not good. However, I still don't see any evidence that he purposefully misled during the campaign to be DNC chair. He never planned on releasing it. And so that is why I say I don't think he lied. I think he intended to release it, and then things happened.
No, I don't know that he necessarily lied when he made the promise. I think I agree with you there that it would have been silly. It doesn't even seem self-serving for him to have made that promise and then go back on it. So I don't understand what what would he gain from lying in that moment. So I don't think it's that plausible he lied when he made the promise.
Elk for
What I think he tried to do, what does sound plausible to me,
I'm spending
given,
way too long
frankly,
here.
what a lot of people are saying, oftentimes hidden behind anonymous reports, you know, grant
Hold
that.
on to
whatever,
it. I shouldn't have crafted
is that it negatively
Nothing.
Bore on his performance, right? He hired this guy. He was the person who was going to have this work product out there. And rather than say, hey, I kind of screwed the pooch here on this report that everyone's waiting for, he didn't say that in the interview. He was saying, hey, John Levitt, hey, John Favreau, you guys, why are you asking me about this fucking report, dudes? And it does seem in that context that a plausible thing to take from that is he didn't want to release it because it would make him look bad. Not that it would make the Democrats look bad.
I don't disagree.
All of his responses up until this point, like, I didn't believe that there was a smoking gun because I was like, well, let's see it if that's the case. But all of his responses made it seem like there was some thing that made him look terrible. Turns out the thing that made him look terrible is it's horribly written and doesn't really tell us a lot of like insightful stuff. And they even
the audio is fucked. I need to lower the game audio. It's risky. And then I can raise the overall audio. Wait.
even released the version that has all of these like uncorroborated facts or just like, you know, completely incorrect statements. It's like, yeah, this looks like shit. And I get not wanting to release that, but that should have been the narrative from the get-go because you allowed all of these people to run away with this like, it's because of Gaza, it's because of this, it's because Biden didn't do this. It's like, well, just tell us why it's bad and then say what lessons you learned and then move on. But by hiding it until now and succumbing to pressure, you essentially, like, I do kind of victim blame for all the conspiracies that came out about this. Like,
I just want to say real quick
thing.
Before Guy answers, I know he has answers. The one thing that you called out in your video, which I think is right, is that a lot of people who hate the Democratic Party and just want to see and watch the world burn and just want to destroy the party are going to use this as a cudgel and they're going to move on to the next thing. But this seems like the thing that's most apt to give them.
Pisco, sorry, can you turn your mic down just a little bit?
Oh, sure, yeah.
You're hot compared
Testing
to the
1
other
2 3.
two.
Testing 1 2 3.
Yep.
Is that any better?
That's true.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. So you're making it easier for this group of people that you've rightly identified to make hay and to like throw rocks at the Democratic Party in an unjustified, or I guess in this context, justified manner, but for the wrong reason.
I'll give Hutch a chance if he wants to weigh in. If not, I can respond.
It was the most predictable Streisand effect ever, and I'm glad that the people that are in the leadership position within the party itself are not super online, but they need to hire people that are. Like, they need to hire a team of like 3 or 4 fucking Zoomers that are super online, because I could have predicted that this was going to turn into a, like, they're going to make it about Gaza. It was like really, really, really predictable. And so I don't know if this means that he should resign. It sure seems like that's being teed up, which is a little depressing, because I feel like people would just
that's not resign worthy.
kind of more sinister agendas are behind that, because it seems like the Democratic Party currently is doing a really good job of winning elections. And so, you know, I don't know enough about his performance as DNC chair. I don't really know logistically, like, if he's doing a good job, but you know, I'm hesitant to call for resignations every single time that particular mob gets pissed. But
It
also,
should have
to
been that
Pisco's
school
point,
shooting kid.
Yeah, I mean, this was like, I think, a big fuck up, and it was kind of
The
predictable.
DNC chair, that is.
I think they need people that are more plugged in into the online space. There does seem to be a disconnect, and we need some people that can translate internet for these boomers.
Well, I actually applied for a job at the DNC maybe a year ago. They had this they had a position they advertised as manager who would deal with new media, kind of a go-between for the DNC and setting up interviews with electeds and members of the DNC. But I didn't even get a call back or an interview or anything. Rip.
Should have been you. It should have been fucking you.
Do you think the people at the top, the people in the leadership, do you think that they're aware of like how much the insurgent left like actually fucking hates them? I don't know if they are.
I think they do. They just probably discount it heavily. Like, well, there's people making noise, and those people, I believe 80 to 90% of them end up voting for Democrats in the end. So they don't really see a need to try to win them over.
Well, like the McMorrow interview, for example. Did you guys all watch that interview with Matt and Emma?
No.
It was not as like...
You know his name now, right, Hutch? You don't just call him the gay guy?
Matt Berenstein, I think his name is. Matt Berenstein and Emma Vigland. The tone wasn't super aggressive, but the subtext was. Like, they were definitely kind of dripping with contempt. And I just, like, in that kind of spot, I wonder if McMorrow understood that she was walking into an interview with, you know, 2 people
She
who
knew.
probably, like, think that she supports genocide and whatever
I
else
got the
thing they're
impression
going
that
with.
she knew.
Same with Slotkin. I'm not sure if she was aware of the
Slotkin,
venue that she
maybe
was walking
not,
into
but
and breaking
I
points.
think
and,
this one recently
you know, it's not
was.
that they should never do these kinds of interviews, but maybe we're straying from the point. But
Well,
Yeah.
I think that there's something there, but I want to reject the framing that this is about the insurgent left or the populist left versus the insider left or the more normal left, because the people who are frustrated with Ken Martin the most are people who are like state chairs and are people who are inside the DNC and are people who I don't think can be classified as like hater of Dems. These are the Pod Save people. These are, you know, New York Times type people. So I don't really think that the criticisms of Ken Martin can all be dialed into awareness about how bad faith some lefties are.
no, that's right. But
yeah.
but the initial major grievance, I would say, was driven by the insurgent left with the Gaza narrative. And I would say the Pod Save guys are aligned with them. But you're right. The state party, the state level
would?
Democrats have been
The Obama types?
Yeah,
Got it to the
definitely. At this
blacksmith
point,
strong box.
I'm not saying they're like tankies or
I could
whatever,
easily
but I
get a
think
better
that they.
weapon.
I speculate.
That's like just most of the Democratic Party, Hutch.
That's
It's
most
like
of the Democrats,
anti-Israel
the people
now,
who think that Gaza is a genocide or that Israel's committing
No,
genocide in
that's
Gaza.
not. That's, no, I
Oh.
mean specifically the charge that they were withholding this report because it said that Gaza lost her the election.
I don't think that the Pod Save people said that. I heard them come out after the John Favreau interview and say that it was because it was shoddy work. This is before it leaked. Before
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
it was
They had
released.
sources. They had sources.
Yeah. So I don't think that they're promoting that narrative. And if anything, right? Like this would have died down mostly if Ken Martin had just never done that interview. I think that
No,
that's
but-
probably what would have happened.
I agree, and I think he screwed that up royally. But I just the arguments for why he needs to go and is failing are so weird to me. It's like, well, the DNC doesn't have money, but we're spending it and we're winning handedly. So it's like they're concerned about an election 2 elections from now, and that you can't think like that. Like, if the guy's doing well right now, you got to work within the moment.
I think
Well,
it's
yeah,
a crisis
you
of
said, like,
credibility.
what's the
Oh, sorry.
what's the
go ahead.
metric, right? Is he still fundraising well? I don't remember. I know right after the election, obviously fundraising was not where it needs to be, but people were waiting for the DNC to come out with a "here's how we're going to win" message. They're waiting to see
man,
how
I
these
love
elections
Pisco.
go, how the midterms go, and once
You-
those
you gotta
go,
love
and
Pisco.
they're like, "Oh, the DNC's spending the money well," that's when the money starts to roll in. But like these kind of swings, just like the approval for the
Pisco is
party
my
that
spirit
lost, like
animal,
they
for sure.
normally happen. So is there like a data that says they're raising on par with 2020? That I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Well,
don't know if
I
you guys
think
have seen
his
that yet.
explanation was that the donors are donating directly to the candidates. I don't know if that was just Coke, but like, for example, in 2016, if you're looking for historical precedent, the DNC was literally bankrupt. They were, I think, over $10 million in debt, and Hillary bailed them out with her war chest. So I don't really know what like the normal kind of baseline for funds in the tank is for this moment in time.
Well, I think
Here's
well, just real quickly, if you go toe to toe, the RNC DNC or the DCCC versus the Republicans version, the Republicans are outraising us tremendously with these organizations. But when you look at the individual candidates, like James Tallarico versus Ken Paxton or John Cornyn, it's night and day. We're completely annihilating.
I just want to say though, with respect to the DNC, I almost think, whether or not anyone has any specific expertise on the fundraising numbers and the individual races versus the other committees, etc., there's a crisis of confidence that I think needs to be assessed, and that is the DNC's most important job is preparing for the presidential election, the debates, the setting up the rules, the schedule, that kind of stuff, and that is where things get very hairy and where I think they need to have the most credibility. You see the kind of problems, some might say scandal, that's happened in the past where it has caused us issues. Now that we're facing a decade past, how many people point to the Donna Brazil emails of 2016, etc.? And this is an area where I think you need to overcompensate in terms of being upfront and being transparent, and that's crucially what this episode, shows a lack of. in my
Well,
view.
winning has a way of smoothing over all the problems. So I think if we have a stellar midterms, you're going to see a lot less complaints about Ken Martin. So I think he deserves a chance to get us through the midterms. And if we do have a bad midterms or not as good of a midterms and people can point to some problems, we can, then we've got a 2-year runway to the elections. And I think it's time to talk about perhaps stepping down. But right now, that was a big point in my video, is we're less than 6 months from the midterms. This would be crazy to swap out our coach right now.
Isn't this kind of playing into the narrative we were talking about last week and a lot of weeks, which is you're comparing individual candidates who might stand on certain policies that invigorate voters, and you're comparing this to the DNC, which is supposed to be this generic apparatus that then transfers those funds into a lot of those elections and raises money for this local one and this local one. If he's unable to do that, I think that's what you're measuring him on. If we do well in the midterms, that could be completely absent of DNC fundraising. I'm not saying it is, but that has no indication as to whether or not he did a good job. That just means those candidates who, according to him, are the ones getting the money and not the DNC are doing a good job with their messaging and their campaigns. So I think you have to be able to look at what did you actually do with the money, and did that actually pan out, or did you not really have a big effect, right?
I agree. Another thing that I didn't include in my video that people aren't talking about is Trump is fundraising off of bribes. I mean, he is asking for money for his ballroom and all sorts of things. Like, it's a piggy bank for graft. So to compare the DNC to that is a little unfair, I think, too.
I agree with that. Obviously, a lot of the deck is stacked against Democrats versus Republicans. But I think there needs to be some failure state that we recognize. What would it take for us to be like, okay, Ken Martin needs to go? What are the metrics? And it's a similar kind of question. I'm not going to demand you guys answer it now, that I often demand of Hutch. What would it take for you to say that Schumer's doing a bad job? Now, Hutch has already said that Schumer should step down. I'm not trying to mischaracterize him or anything, but this is what I'm talking about. That sometimes Democrat success is in spite of either incompetence or just kind of genericness or not particularly superbness on behalf of some of these institutional figures, that we're winning in spite of them as opposed to because of them.
So is your
and that's what I don't
position
wanna
that you
do.
do want him to resign?
I'm leaning towards he should go and just let's get someone new and fresh. I haven't called for it because, to be honest, I'm not like super read in on the numbers aspect and the fundraising. I think anyone who's calling for the DNC chair to step down should be aware of the relationship to donors. But I am leaning in that direction because of how horrible this event has shown him to be from a character perspective, from a confidence perspective, from a personnel perspective. This episode has shown bad judgment, and so that's why I'm leaning in that direction.
It just feels like I understand, like, you need confidence in the leadership, and sometimes it's not even really about the performance. Sometimes the perception is the only thing that matters. I guess this feels like such like a footnote in terms of what his day-to-day probably looks like for the DNC. The truth is, I don't really know what his daily operational sort of like jobs are, but this feels like it would just be on the low end of importance. It does sound like he made a bad decision, but it wouldn't be enough for me to say that he should step aside. Now, like, if you show me data that shows, like, you know, a lot of the state level Democrats just don't have confidence in him, then I would support calling for him to step aside. But I just don't know.
What did you guys think about the whole like outing David Hogg thing that happened way at the beginning of last year?
Oh,
What
yeah,
happened?
David Hogg.
Ken Martin
That's-
and that kind of ilk, like they pushed out David Hogg
Well,
from the DNC.
Is
I
Hutch really
thought he
gonna
was
defend
pushed out
that?
because of there was some kind of a process issue. IRI,
Yeah, but
you-
that was
you-
bullshit. There was some, oh, you need to hire a woman for this thing, and they're like, well, you weren't a woman, but really it was because David Hogg was challenging more center like left Democrats with like, hey, we need to replace these people with people that are actually get the job done. Very like maybe you want to call it insurgent left. Kind of like tactics to say like,
Well,
let's get
that-
more progressive lefties in here. But
That's
like,
a co-
yeah,
that's
the
a pretty
process thing was just an excuse.
Well, that's a pretty serious conflict. Like, if you're going to join the DNC,
Yeah, sure.
then you should be on the team. And I'm not saying, you know, this is a democracy, so you can
He was, but
branch
you're
off
allowed
and,
to
and
like
do your own group and
you're
try
allowed
to support
primary people.
primary challengers. My understanding is that he hasn't really been that successful so far, but I don't think you can do both of those jobs at the same time. I do think it's reasonable to ask that you just do one or the other.
Yeah, it was some procedural thing. They claimed the vote didn't go the way it was supposed to, and there was like supposed to be another woman. It was a very soy cringe thing that happened. I disagree with you, Soy Pill, that it was to push him out. To this day, I don't understand why they couldn't work it out with him, and because I think his voice is important. I still very much like David Hogg, even if I disagree with some of his actions. I think his voice is really important. I mean, I remember him on Bill Maher. He was talking about, listen, we got to reach young guys. You got to talk about getting laid and making money. And I think that's the kind of messaging that we need to have, you know, and so we need guys like him who can speak for young men within the party. And the fact that he was a vice chair is a pretty big deal. I know there's a couple of them, but still. So I don't know why that didn't work out, but I disagree with you that he was pushed out. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
It didn't work out because he formed a group who were doing primary challenges, and it's been DNC policy for years now to support incumbents. And so that is a pretty intense conflict to have, you know. I don't know. You know,
Should it be
Th-
DNC policy to support incumbents? I mean, maybe that's one of the. This is maybe different than the DNC
Good question.
leadership under Ken Martin, and now just talking more generally about what the Democrats' position should be. But I think a
Excellent
lot of
question.
incumbents need to go. I think a lot of Democrats. One of the reasons, even though I know that IRI discounts a lot of polling and stuff, but one of the reasons I think the Democrats are souring on their own party is because of some of these old guard figures that have no riz and that they don't believe in.
Well,
wasn't the big problem with 2016 that people felt like the DNC was showing a bias? Like, I don't know if like that.
Well, no, I'm just asking. I thought you said that it's the DNC policy to support incumbents, and
Yeah,
that's a
just a
bias in
blanket-
favor of incumbents.
Right, but it seems like you're proposing a new system where they would, you know, potentially support primary challenges, which means
No,
that
I'm
there
just
would be-
I'm just questioning whether or not, if it is a policy to support incumbents as a matter of course, what's the wisdom of that policy?
Well, I think strategically it makes sense because incumbents have such an advantage. But again, this would be introducing a new kind of bias into the DNC, which
A
basically
new
runs
kind
counter
of
to
bias.
the criticism from 2016. So I don't know. Like, is it the right decision? I mean,
Meaning a different
probably
bias.
Like-
statistically, probably.
it might be statistically right. I know it caused Nancy Pelosi to support that, like, pro-life Democrat in Texas for that one House seat, which was, I think, just an atrocious decision. So I don't think there should just be this hard line support the incumbent. It should be support, like, the candidate who wins the primary, right? Like, if you're, like, putting your toe on the scale in these primaries, like, shouldn't the Democratic voters get to decide which Democrat's the best one? And once that's the case, your job is to beat Republicans, not to pick, like, which Democrat is the one that you like more. I don't know. I don't like that idea, and I don't like the idea of funding from the Democratic Party going to, like, kind of affecting primaries in that way. But I'd have to look and see, like, what the actual outcomes are in a majority. That was the one time where I really focused on that, other than the Bernie Hillary stuff. So,
And if I
think
was
competition
going to
is
support,
good.
oh, go ahead.
Competition is good. I don't think the Democratic Party should stand in the way of people being challenged. You should have to fight for your job every time. It just makes you stronger.
100%.
I'll say one last thing I just wanted to add is, like, when I met Ken Martin in San Francisco, and he was doing this thing that was supposedly, my understanding was, I'm reaching out to creators because we just lost the election and we want to figure out how we can do what Hutch and I and all of you guys were talking about, which is, hey, we need some cool, like, young voices to, like, get their finger on the pulse of where the country is, because our media strategy doesn't work. And he was talking about, like, we fired all the media strategists from 2024, but he did not, I don't think, ask a single question of any of the people there about how to reach out to them. It was all him reassuring us, like, by the way, and this is what we're doing right, as if to, like, make us his cheerleaders. And I'm like, well, this is not what you should be doing. Contrasted to Gavin Newsom met with some people at TwitchCon, and he was asking really good questions, like, what kind of audiences do you have? How do these messages disseminate? What are they looking for? What are people in your audience like? What are the problems that they're most focused on? Ken Martin did none of that, and that did not inspire me with confidence. So as to whether or not he should step down, I've seen time and time again, maybe he's fundraising well, that he's just making poor decisions that I don't think are going to be putting the money in the right spot. And I would rather someone who, inspires me with confidence. But if the people that he is giving the money to are inspired by this, and they're like, hey, you're doing a good job, you're helping my race out, then that's really the most important metric. And I'm just an influencer, so I can't speak to whether or not he should step down. It's just what I'm getting.
I wanted to say one other thing, which is, if you take the view that Jon Favreau did something, like, horrible in that exchange with Ken Martin, I just think that, if Ken Martin thought it was a good idea to go in there antagonistically, as he did, in my view, he did. Not to say that Jon Favreau wasn't, like, obviously going down a strict line of questioning there. I just don't think that you're in tune with the Democratic base. My view of it, which is most people want to see more fight. Most people want to see a closer connection to the voting members. And I just don't have the confidence that he is doing that right now, and that he has the self-reflection perhaps to make those changes, unless it's in his direct interest or when it gets, like, out of hand. And we need to be, like, ruthless. And part of being ruthless means, if it is appropriate at the time, to make a change in leadership. And, like, let's not just rest on our laurels. We learned that lesson, or I thought we learned that lesson from Biden. So that's just something that I want to carry forward in all walks of Democratic leadership.
Well, I feel like Pod Save America, and it sounds like whatever show McMorrow went on, like, they're not trying to help. In my opinion, it may seem like it, and if you ask them, they'll tell you, I'm just trying to help. But the way they frame their questions and the way they interrogate these people just makes you think that they're not even trying to figure anything out, because they can't point to anything positive. It's all negative, and they seem just completely convinced that something needs to change as we win by double digits. And I don't get that vibe, Pisco, that these guys are actually trying to help.
Aren't they
in any way.
vindicated
I
by
don't
Ken
consider
Martin's
them on the right.
response?
Well, I don't think they're on the right or MAGA or fake, Democrats. But why are they so angry? Why are they so convinced they're right? And there's no love or anything, no support in any way.
I'm not. First thing I'll take on is, like, this notion of their antagonism. Aren't they vindicated by Ken Martin's response? I mean, Ken Martin came out and said, I'm sorry, it was the wrong move with respect to the report. Doesn't that mean that Jon Favreau, even Ken Martin acknowledges, was correct in the criticism vis-a-vis the report?
He was, but we could have convinced Ken Martin to release the report in a much different way. You know what I mean? Like if Ken Martin came on this show, we could raise the same concerns in the way they did in a completely different way because we're doing it from a place of, hey, we want to win. And I don't get that vibe from them. They just want to antagonize.
Yeah, sure. But Ken Martin went with the approach to Pod Safe to do the interview on that issue. And so it's not, it cannot be, I think, reasonably construed as an ambush. If Martin is seeking out an interview with Pod Save America on this issue, and he knows it's going to come up, and he knows that it's about to critique, and in fact, he goes up to Favreau specifically because he's mad at the critique, then in no sense can I say that this is an attempt by Pod Save to try to, like, fuck with Ken Martin. If it's the case...
Wait, Pisco, can I add to that real quick? If you watch that interview, the counter arguments that Ken Martin was giving were not really addressing what Jon Favreau was saying. Jon Favreau had a criticism, and Ken Martin had this kind of like rehearsed, like, well, actually, there's no smoking gun, to a question that didn't really suggest that there was, because he was so used and knew these criticisms were going to come up that he was already kind of getting ahead of things that John wasn't even asking yet. So it's not as if he like walked in blind and got ambushed. He was very aware that this was like, I want to fix the optics on this. And so much so that I think he was like answering questions that weren't being asked because he was so ready for this to be like a Gaza, Gaza, Gaza sort of thing, right? So I'm not sure this is like, oh, we're being so unfair. If you look at the McMorrow interview, the questions they ask are, hey, like, we like, you know, XYZ policy, but in general, like this healthcare thing you just said, we fundamentally disagree with. You are implying, and she walks this back and says it's a joke, but she implied that if you have government in charge of healthcare and then Donald Trump gets in office, it will be bad. Therefore, the government shouldn't be in charge of that social program, which is an absurd thing to say. That's not how anyone views social programs. Oh, we couldn't have them because if a Republican gets in office, they'll be run poorly. So they confronted her on that because it's like, hey, this is a fundamental disagreement from what would have otherwise appeared to be two aligned Democrats. And I don't think this is just like, I just want to be antagonistic. It's like, hey, this is disqualifying for someone that I would vote for in a primary over the person that's not going to say cut social programs.
But there you go, Soito, you nailed it. They're always looking for disqualifying things. It's like the answer for these guys is just to fire and get rid of things. They never want to work with what's right in front of them in any way. It's always like, this, you got to go, or you got to get fired. It's like, that's not how life works, you know? It's like, we're a family. You don't just fire your family. You work with them.
It's a new kind of incarnation of Bernie or bust. It's like Syed or bust in that conversation. And it's like you're interviewing a U.S. Senate candidate who will be a part of so many consequential votes that address dozens of like consequential issues in this country. And it's an hour-long interview, and you spend 15 minutes pressing her on Medicare for All, a policy that we're not even close to passing in the Congress. It's not going to pass in the next Congress, or the one after that, probably. Probably not the one after that either. And then the rest of the 45 minutes is on Gaza. And it's like, okay, we can have a conversation about Gaza and foreign policy, that's fine. But I just feel like, to IRI's point, they're not there with any kind of curiosity. It is, for them, a broader campaign, a broader agenda of like wiping out the Democratic Party of everyone that is not in their particular tent. And it's extremely hostile and antagonistic. And, you know, it's a little uncomfortable to be in a coalition with these people. I don't think Emma's as bad as other lefties. I mean, she was pushing for people to vote for Kamala, you know, like I wouldn't put her on the same tier as like Hassan or anything like that, but
yeah,
these are like well-known divisions of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but come on, Pisco, 45 minutes on Gaza? 45 minutes?
Oh, I mean, I don't know.
Is that
I
too
haven't
much?
seen the interview. It's 45 minutes on Gaza seems like way too much for an interview with a Senate candidate. So, I mean, yeah, if it's 45 minutes there, I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen it. I'm just responding to what you're saying. But on the point about Medicare for All versus public option versus increasing Affordable Care Act and all that stuff, these are not like some out there divisions in the Democratic Party. This was the basis of the 2020 campaign, Sanders against Joe Biden. It's one of the biggest, you know, I guess policy ideological disagreements between those two. And I think if you can't be surprised by that. If you're a Democratic candidate running a Democratic primary, and this is one of the big divisions in the Democratic sort of ideological camp, you got to be ready for that and just knock it out of the park. And yeah, 15 minutes.
I thought she did fine for the record. You
Okay,
should
then
watch
great.
it. I mean, I think she.
So I don't think that that's a problem. 45 minutes on Gaza, I mean, that seems like too much, but just to be aware, like, this is also now a crystallizing moment for the Democratic Party where we are Israel skeptic. we don't want, and I'm just speaking now for the majority of the Democratic Party, we don't want to give military or economic aid to Israel based on what their conduct is in the Middle East, to say nothing of the Iran war. And that just is a position we want to see reflected in the Democratic Senate. I want to see that position reflected in the Democratic Senate. Now, do I want 45 minutes? No, but I do think it's fair to ask those questions.
Well, you said she's not Hassan, right? And I agree. And like, what's the fundamental difference there? The difference is I fully support people rallying and criticizing and getting attacked from the left in primaries because you want to push the people that you are going to be represented by to be more aligned with you. I think this is the time to do it. To go, hey, there's 2 Democrats in this primary. Let's talk to the one who might have a better chance of winning and see if we can move her further left or press her why
That's
she's
not what they're doing, though. That's not what they're doing. Come on.
I don't. What do you mean? If you're challenging her things that aren't as left as you and saying like, I think you need to change on that, that's exactly the time to do it. What's wrong with that?
They're Syed or bust. It's not like, well, I could warm up.
No,
tomorrow
but you
or
know that
something,
Syed, you know that's like Emma is not Syed or bust. She's not fucking whatever primary person or bust, Bernie or bust. She's like, hey, go vote for Kamala. Kamala needs to win, right? That the majority of report people are not dead enders. So if you talk, you and I have the same smoke for Hassan, which is if you're going to criticize, and then not even help when it comes to the general, all you've done is hurt, right? Because you didn't get what you wanted, and now you're going to sabotage our chances. That's
now you're subpoenaed.
Yeah,
we'll get
now
to that.
we'll get to that. But I mean, here I guess maybe it makes more sense to show some of these supers like as they're relevant. They say promoting better, and this is opinionated, primary candidates and demanding better party conduct so Dems win more. If that was the case, again, this is making assumptions, is helping the Democratic Party. I mean, it depends on who you're promoting and why, but it's the time to do it, right? It's during the primary. You're supposed to say, hey, if you're gonna win.
No. I
No,
disagree.
when are we allowed to criticize
I disagree.
our own party?
Because that person's super chat is talking about 2028. So the time to think about 2028 is after these midterms, not before. That's what's driving me nuts. Is that all these people are like concern trolling about 2028, but we haven't even seen the midterm results yet.
They're not trying to push McMorrow left. They're drawing, like, the battle lines have been drawn, and as far as, like, I'm glad that Emma tells her audience that, the harm reduction principle is valid and they should support Kamala. But for example, like on the off-cycle election last November, I watched a bit of their live coverage, and obviously they were elated over Mamdani, as they should have been. That was a really big win, but they were actively like downplaying. They were so salty about Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger's margins. They were legitimately fucking pissed off that people were talking about how crazy those margins were, and they thought that it was like some plot to like undermine this, the real winner of that night, which was Mamdani.
Hutch
So
relies
like they're on the
this
team, but
anecdote so much.
they're not like the best people to have on the team, because when it's not an election year, they're constantly using their platforms to accuse people like McMorrow, who is, somewhere on the spectrum between like center left and progressive. She's like decently
on the
progressive.
spectrum, now
if you
you're
didn't get
being
Medicare for
ableist?
all, public option would still be awesome, and it would drive costs down, and it would expand coverage to so many people. And so to them, I just don't like the all or nothing mentality. I don't think it's helpful.
But it's not
in
all
the
or
lo-
nothing, right? We both agree that these people specifically are not all or nothing people. They're, hey, we didn't get what we want, and this is why we've got to support those people. And you can be salty that you didn't get what you want. Like, I could be mad Bernie didn't win in 2020 and still say, and here's why we're all going to go out and campaign for Joe Biden, because this is such a better option. Let's go do it. I'm going to enthusiastically do it. That's not all or nothing. That's, I criticized them when I had the chance. I wanted this. I didn't get it. I'm salty about it. And you know what? I'm still going to help you win. And if
But
they're
these
in
are
the
not-
tent, they're in the tent, right? And that's Emma, okay? I don't know about Bernstein. I don't know enough about him, but like,
But
Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy.
well,
Wait, why?
These are not
Wait
just
till-
like
I don't know.
these are not just policy disagreements, though. I would like to get back, like as a party, to get back to a place where we can have policy disagreements, and it doesn't mean that you're, like if you don't meet their purity test, they designate you as like a pro-Israel, pro-genocide, pro-corporation shill, and everybody else is like in their tent. But really, we're talking about like 95% of the party. That's what I don't like. Like it's not about like just policy disagreements. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
95% of the party is with who?
I'm saying 95% of the party would not pass their purity tests.
Oh, in terms
Like
of their
actual
policy perspective.
actual elected Democrats.
Here's the way to test it, Hutch. If you had before you El Sayed and you had 15 minutes to do an interview on his healthcare policy, and you were pressing like, but how are you going to do that, right? Is the country ready for this? Do we actually have the funds necessary to be able to implement Medicare for all? And how is this feasible given the overall dynamics of the country and that, you know, the small margin in the Senate? Would you view that as an inappropriate set of questions?
No, that's completely appropriate to ask. Like, what is the practical path to actually accomplishing
Does he
the policy?
understand
That's not
where
what makes the
Costco's
practical
going?
hostile
question.
questions.
Wait, if you're like, how are you going to afford that? I mean, right now our entitlement spending is, you know, huge part of our national debt. It's rising. It just seems impractical to have anything approaching Medicare for all right now. The country's not ready for it. How are you going to do that, Mr. Sir?
Well, you would
You
have
know,
to raise. You would have to raise taxes. I mean, obviously, but asking.
But this is pressing. That's not a. That's a question. Yeah.
That's not. There's a difference between that and asking questions and pushing a narrative that someone like McMorrow is like pro-genocide, which is what Matt did on his Twitter feed. By the way, he talked so much shit in the intro of that interview, and then in the outro, and then when he was talking to her, he was like so like almost like sheepish. I wonder if that's why he brought Emma in, because she was like a little bit more scrappy, but not even that bad.
Well, I condemn Matthew. I condemn all his works. So put that aside. Put the personality aside. Put the other evidence of bad intent aside. I'm talking about like the nature of the questioning and what makes something like a good set of questions, a bad set of questions. Like pressing someone on policy issues, whether from a more practical, pragmatic standpoint, or from a more idealistic standpoint, or from a more, I don't know, populist-infused standpoint. What is the substantive difference between those two lines of questions? The nature of the questions themselves, I'm asking.
How you're going to pay for a policy is just like a really straightforward question that every politician should have answers for. I mean, I just feel like that's like there's nothing wrong with pressing.
You like the questions that are more tailored to your view.
I'm not saying don't press politicians. That's fine. You can press politicians. That's completely okay.
Only on things
it's the
that
agenda that I'm talking about. They're not there to like
think are
push her
within the
left.
Overton window.
The agenda is to tar and feather her. As
What's the agenda when
Not
people
in the
ask
tribe.
Bernie Sanders,
Bro.
how are you going to pay for it? Not, hey, can
Does Hutch realize that tarring and feathering was literally torture? You know how bad it hurts to have that hot tar poured on your skin? You know how much worse it hurts having to take that shit off after it dries? They asked her a hard question. It's not like actually torturing somebody. What the fuck?
you
not what I'm
explain
talking
more.
about.
No, but listen. When someone comes up to a progressive and they like are critical of progressive ideals, they're saying this is pie in the sky. The questions that you're getting are not, hey, like here's your space to explore how this is going to work. The questions are always framed in such a way that this isn't going to work unless you can convince me otherwise. In the same way that Emma and Matt are going to come after these people and be like, it seems like you're kind of pro-Israel. Like, do you want to explain that? Or it seems like you want to cut social. Like, it's hostile.
No.
It is a hostile framing of the question, and it seems like why is it any different when you do this to a progressive that you're like, I don't really think your thing's going to work. Why don't you explain?
But
Well,
who's doing that? To
Yeah, I'm not-
progressives?
I'm
That's
not
Everyone, all the time. What do you mean? That's like progressives get this shit all the time. How are you going to pay for it? This is socialism. What are you doing?
But they
Every
did
day.
it to Mamdani. They did it to Mamdani in the primary debates. They were like going after the realism of some of his policies. That was a big talking point into that whole thing.
Budget questions are completely appropriate. If you phrase it like, well, this is pie in the sky, you're never going to be able to do it. Okay, that's hostile. But if you just ask a candidate, what is your plan to actually fund this program? That's a completely fair question.
Okay,
I'm
right.
not saying-
okay,
no,
but Hutch,
I'm not
Hutch,
saying
is it
it's
not,
unfair.
Wait, Pisco.
Yeah.
Is it not a fair question to say, Madeline McMorrow, you said we might not want these programs single payer because right now Trump and RFK are in office, and that would be really bad, wouldn't it? And then the question coming from that is, well, wouldn't this imply that we should have no social programs that are completely dictated by the government? Because then, if our Republicans get in,
4
they'll fuck
hours
it up.
30 is
That's the implication, right? That's not a
best time.
hostile question.
That's a fair
insofar as,
question,
like,
isn't it?
It's unfair. That's what she said, and they're
No.
questioning it.
I
And
think
now
that-
it's antagonistic for sure, but in the same way it's antagonistic
This helmet
to say, hold
probably
on,
helps.
you want single payer healthcare? How are you going to pay for that? You can look up Bernie's plan and see how he proposed to pay for it. Asking him that to explain it is not just this neutral way of getting him to explain the ins and outs. It's, I'm skeptical of your ability to do this. So is a lot of America. Socialism is a dirty word. So you're going to have to explain
And
that
you should be able
me,
to handle
or else I'm
skepticism, and you
exiting.
should be able
Yeah,
to
and
handle
that's fine.
skewed, skeptical
Yes.
questions as a candidate. And sometimes,
fair.
yes, these are skewed and skeptical and ideological questions, and you need to be able to handle them.
To be clear, that particular line of questioning I thought was appropriate. And like the way I interpreted what she said was, I just assumed she was probably in a room full of like union members that really like their health insurance. And so she was kind of like working the crowd. Like that's how I took that. And so I don't know. To me, I'm completely on board with the public option. I think that is doable in the next Congress if we get rid of the filibuster.
But not
And so
Medicare for all?
I lean towards like supporting a candidate who is
Why wouldn't
pushing
you
for
support
a public
both?
option rather than the ones that are pushing for Medicare for all, because I think the ones that are, you know, throwing this purity test down, saying if you don't support Medicare for all, you're like a corporatist shill. I just think these people are lying to themselves and they're lying to the people that watch their content. Is we
Why?
are not,
What's the lie?
we are not getting single payer in this country anytime in the next 10 years. We're not even close to it.
Yeah,
I just feel like I live in a different in an alternative reality or something, because every time a more moderate candidate goes on one of
I
these
guess if
shows
you
and they happen to
sound
be very
really
popular,
fucking paternal and with a deep voice when you say it, it has to be true, right?
it's antagonistic, and it's 45 minutes of single questions to box them in a corner with no interest in learning or, you know, even being won over in any way at all. But then when I see Bernie or AOC or someone more progressive go on a interview with more moderate people, they don't rough them up. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, I don't see these moments where it's like, if Bernie goes on MS Now, they're going to rough him up for 45 minutes about paying for Medicare for all.
Rough them up.
Yeah, so I don't know that it may be the case that the lefty candidates aren't going on more I don't know what you would call that, affirmatively centrist podcasts or more combative shows or whatever. I mean, that definitely could be the case. It could also just be the nature of the online commentary that you see a lot more progressive shows and progressive media members than you see of like far left ones. But I will say, like, mainstream media news organizations, like the CNNs of the world, I think that those places oftentimes give like layup interviews for moderate candidates. They give layup interviews and invite them to their shows to be. Do you doubt that, Hutch?
I'm just thinking of the way that the media treated Biden specifically.
No, I mean, yes, no,
maybe you have a point that this kind of thing happens when it comes to senators or representatives.
I absolutely agree that different candidates are treated differently, but the notion that there aren't places where liberal candidates or more centristy candidates don't get like layup interviews and toss-up interviews and toss-up questions, I think that they do go to those places. Just to let you know, like places like Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pakman, these are people that I like. I think are often giving glowing interviews of more centristy candidates. Jared Polis not anymore, but I think Jared Polis had a good encounter with the Bulwark about 5 or 6 months ago. Where
But Pisco, just quickly, do you think Brian Tyler Cohen would give AOC a hard time?
No, I don't think that he would necessarily give her a hard time. But I'm just saying, like, there are places where more centristy liberals go to get, you know, fair, easy interviews right now.
I'm just saying that it's like every time a more moderate candidate goes on one of these platforms, there's no love there. It's like they might as well be MAGA the way they're treated. It's really, really frustrating.
If you're, let's put it this way. If you're like a more, oh God, let's not do centrist discord. What word should we use? Moderate.
Moderate.
More moderate. I'm gonna say more moderate.
If
If you're more moderate, then if you wouldn't pass their purity test, but let's say you're decently progressive, but you're not like, you know, in the Emma Vigeland camp, what is the upside of going on their shows? If you're running for a campaign, if you're doing a campaign,
that's up to every campaign to determine. I mean, that's up to them to determine whether it's a positive or not. I think that there's plenty of upside to go on there and show that you have chops and that your ideas are worth their mettle, right? Like, if you actually have good ideas, and you're trying to convince people who think differently, I think one way to do that is to show that you're willing to go up and answer to all your critics. Now, you could say, okay, so you don't think it's worth it, then why do they go? Why do they go?
Because they don't have enough fucking Zoomers on their staff telling them that these people fucking hate them, and they're not there to be curious and ask questions. They're there to tear them down. That's the point.
So many times though, Hutch. And then do you not trust then these candidates to like make good decisions in Congress if they can't even bother to do cursory Google searches of the people whose shows they're going on?
They should be busy. They should be doing shit all day. They need fucking Zoomers on their staff to tell them these people will treat you like
candidates.
You should treat this like an interview, like it's with Sean Hannity. That's what I'm saying.
That's what we mean, right? Like, so there's value that some candidates take in going and doing hostile combative interviews or with people who are going to push a given angle. I would be surprised, and maybe they just are that dense, that the people who scheduled McMorrow for this interview with Majority Reporter Emma Vigeland didn't figure that these conversations were going to loom large. They know that Gaza is one of these big...
Pisco, she was accused of dodging this for a while. There was all this discourse, but that was clearly hostile discourse leading up to it. So there's no way she went into this and thought, oh, and we're just going to have a chummy conversation where we all just circle jerk and agree. There's no shot. She knew this, there was some going to be hostilities, and she was going to use this as a way to say, no, you shouldn't be worried about this.
So
And
if everyone is up front,
She has
if
chops,
everyone's
though.
up front, where's the lie, right? Like if everyone is up front, listen, this is what we're pushing. We're pushing this agenda, and we're going to hammer you on this agenda. And they're up front with it, and the other side knows what it's going to get into. Like, what's the issue?
If I was advising those candidates, I would tell them not to go in those spaces. I
Okay.
literally think there's probably more value going on Hannity and like
Why?
Because showing that you're scrappy against Republicans has value to Democratic Party voters.
True.
You know,
Yeah,
like how
no
many Emma
shit.
Vigeland and Matt Bernstein viewers like
That's why it's
warmed
so
up to
curious that you
McMorrow
don't
as a
do
result
that.
of that interview? Like probably literally zero. But that's just my.
But I'm just not sure that it's a fait accompli like that for every single candidate who's going to go on one of these shows.
Hutch does
that
not
every
know what
candidate
fait
is going to just like
accompli
fail
means.
to convince anybody there. Presumably they're going there because they think that there's some positive to be obtained from it. And I don't know that I am in a better position to say that like you're not going to get positives by having more media coverage, especially in a media-starved situation where the other side, for example, El Sayed is getting a lot of like free press and stuff. I think you need to you got to do what like Kamala Harris didn't do and with Joe Rogan.
I just have to ask though, why do these lefty channels like Pod Save America or whatever, or Majority Report, they assume that these people are like evil almost. That there's like no charitability at all, that they're coming from a good place and that they just have a different approach to things, and they're even for people within our own party. It's mind blowing. I could talk to the most leftist socialist person ever, and it wouldn't be a fist fight because I think they're coming from a good place. I disagree with them, but I'm not going to attack them like they're a monster, you know?
Pod Save can't be considered one of those lefty shows. They're like in favor of
really into
promoting Act Blue and they were all in on Kamala Harris to win the election and 100% trying to raise money and get us across the finishing line. They're Obama bros. Are they really like lefty types that
They're not.
are
They're
dead
not quite
enders?
like they're not quite like Hassan, but I think that they've definitely positioned themselves to be more aligned with like that space for sure in the last, I don't know, 5 years or so.
Yeah,
I think
and
my theory is that they staffed
they had the
they
Hassan
staffed,
interview, right,
they staffed
Hutch?
crooked media with a bunch of like young progressive, like educated New York Times reading, progressives, and those people are more aligned. That's just my theory. I can't prove it, but.
But they gave kind of a softy interview to Hassan, so you're not wrong on that assumption. Real quick, super
There's
chat
a
from
super chat,
IRI's favorite organization, Progressive Victory. What IRI is complaining about is the same old complaints that was levied at Jon Stewart for over a decade when he interviewed people he liked. So I think what he's saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, Jon Stewart gave pretty softball interviews to like if Obama came on or that sort of thing.
100%.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was like, well, and then he would kind of dodge this and say, well, I'm a comedian. I'm not supposed to hold them to account. I'm not supposed to hold their feet to the fire. And that's fine. I don't think you shouldn't give a softball interview, and I don't think you shouldn't give an antagonistic interview. But this idea that like, well, we can never go on these shows because then I might have to answer. If anything, I mean, I saw someone kind of posit McMorrow did this because she can use it as a tool to say, look, I'm not like the radical left, right? I am more reasonable. And you
She's
guys
scrappy.
view this as a positive. And yeah, I'm a scrappy. I'm not going to bow to this like, purity testing bullshit. And if that's the case, then like, yeah, like
That's fine, but I don't think the goal should be to have your audience hating this person who's on your team and you have a policy disagreement with and could possibly be the next senator from Michigan, shall we say. Right? Like, I think you're failing when you do that. When you're like, I'm just exposing her as the monster she is. Like, dude, what are you doing, man?
You're
Like,
accepting the premise that we are functionally on the same team. I mean, when it comes down to the, like Emma suggesting that her audience vote for Kamala. Okay, fine, but what's she doing on her show, and what kind of rhetoric is she using for the rest of the time? Like the year and a half leading into the next election cycle, it's just constant. These are corporate Dems, APAC.
Can you make sense of my my campaign against Jared Polis then? Because if you're watching my Twitter feed for the last week, I would say probably 70 to 80% of my tweets and my commentary has been about how Jared Polis needs to resign and how Democrats are actually too weak in saying that he should just be like censored or whatever. On that view, right? Would I be not on the camp, not on the team in that sense? I'm spending so much time trying to purity test
You're going after
on the issue of
Jared Polis, though.
anti-MAGA, anti-Trumpism, right? I'm purity testing in that sense. And there are people in my comments saying, look at all the good things that Polis did, and he's actually not that bad. Aren't I purity testing?
No,
Well,
I think you're. Oh, go ahead, Guy. I feel like you've been jumping in. There's some super chats in the private chat, Soy Pill, that you should read.
Oh, in the private chat, yeah, real quick. So from Das Vidania says, annoying thing for me is that people spent years complaining how the DNC didn't invest enough in state parties. Now that they are, they're getting trashed for it. That strategy costs a lot of money. Although Act Blue is just a payment platform, not an ideological one, I guess it's ideological towards Democrats.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, people saying, oh, you didn't do enough, you didn't do enough. I don't think people are criticizing the DNC for not doing enough now. Now it's, okay, you are showing this, like, poor decision making, and I'm a little fed up with it.
I'm going to
Guy,
move on. And go ahead.
I was going to say, it looked like Guy wanted to jump in. There's 2 more super chats that I put in there, by the way.
Yeah, I see
Well,
them. So yeah,
the-
go ahead.
The Polis thing, it's tough because it's about, can he still serve the people of Colorado with what he's done? And I think there is an argument to be made that he did it in order to prevent what happened in California, where we just lost $1 billion from Trump withholding Medicaid funds, right? So it sounds like that may be the case. He claims not, but I don't know. I'm not a citizen of Colorado, and he's not my governor, so I find it's kind of pointless to weigh in personally. But I don't know, Pisco. I don't think
This is the big question.
I think, but like, I think your heart is in the right place, and that you want the people of Colorado to have a governor that is fighting for them. I don't get that impression when I see these interviews with more moderate candidates on more lefty shows. I feel like they want to just vilify this person and show what a monster they are.
That is what I
I
want to
think
do
you
with
wanna
Jared
do
Polis after he came out that way. But I guess this is the big question, because I think this cuts across the different kind of commentaries we've been doing about the report, and now some of these interviews and the interaction with the media, which is, under what circumstances and in what situations are we good to criticize Democrats hard? When and how? Like Ken Martin, not right now because it's the midterms, right? Not on very progressive shows when it's clear you have an agenda for this policy and initiative. Like when? Like when am I good to go hard?
Whenever you
can
want.
criticize. It's just how you're doing it that I have a problem with. Not you personally, but in general, I have a problem with how these people, the Hassans of the world, are criticizing the Democratic Party. It doesn't feel genuine. It feels that they have an agenda, as Hutch was saying.
Would
Okay,
you
wait,
agree?
hold on, wait.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm gonna start strife. Hutch, when you repost the El Sayed is lying about his doctor credentials, is this the right way to criticize a candidate when it has nothing to do with his policy, but it's a character attack on whether or not he's been misleading the public?
I don't even know if I.
Is your agenda that you
don't
don't
even
like
know
his
if I would
policies,
care
and
to
so you're
answer
going
that.
on about the doctor thing, or is it like this person's untrustworthy? Like, to me, this would be far beyond what they did to McMorrow. And it actually might be a legitimate criticism, right? It's like, hold on, if this guy's fucking lying to people, this is not a legitimate person we should be trusting. However, I think that to say that that's allowed, and what, having McMorrow on and asking her questions about the things she said
You
in
don't see
some
a
like
difference between those
unacceptable
two?
way.
If you
No,
were
I do.
grilling El Sayed,
I think the
wait,
reposting the story is
I think
worse.
there's a
let's do it. Let's
big
do it one for
attack.
one. Let's say
Wait,
you
wait,
invited
hang
El
on.
Sayed and you were
hang on,
grilling him
what-
on the doctor thing. Would you say that's
What?
unacceptable?
No, I don't think so at all. At
Me
all.
neither.
At
That's
all.
fine.
But there's a difference between going after a candidate. Like, I think Syed has problems as a candidate. He consistently polls worse than the other 2 candidates, and I just don't trust his judgment. That being said, if he becomes the nominee, you guys know I will, probably hold significant fire and, support him. I'm taking my Zoloft and telling my chat to.
Do you doubt that about Emma with McMorrow? Do you doubt that?
To vote for Plattner. But there's a difference between criticizing Syed for, I think that's like clearly problematic, the way that he represented himself with those kinds of credentials.
That's fine.
But
And
there's
they
a
think
difference
it's
between that
problematic
and-
on policy grounds.
But
They
wait,
think it's
no, no,
problematic
no.
on policy grounds.
No, wait, hold on. The criticism of that Matt, and I don't know if Emma said this. I'd have to rewatch the interview and watch some of her coverage on Majority Report to hear what she says about McMorrow. But the criticism from Matt was she supports genocide, or is like enabling a genocide because she supported funding for the Iron fucking Dome. That is so far beyond like a criticism to tar someone in that way, to say that they
My guess is
they
at least 20%
either
of
tacitly
Democrats.
endorse secretly endorse genocide
agree with
or
that
enable
framing.
genocide. That's a much different kind of.
What would be
thing,
worse?
where-
So in your mind, what would be worse? To fund Iron Dome or to inflate your doctor's credentials?
The classic Hutch
Serious
trolley
question.
problems. I love these.
Serious
I love these
question.
trolley
What would be worse? I don't
What
even
would be
know.
worse
like,
for a
what-
candidate?
lie
Is
about
it
being
worse
a
for a
doctor
candidate?
very
Is it
real
worse
money.
for a candidate to fund Iron Dome or to inflate their doctor's credentials?
I think voting to fund Iron Dome is somewhat defensible, and I don't understand how it relates to the questionable. Like when you're talking about someone who is misrepresenting their credentials, which is I think what he did. That's kind of gets at someone's character a little bit, right? Like that gets at someone's quality as a candidate. Like I just don't have those same concerns with McMorrow.
So I happen to think the character's a huge issue, and I think that I'm not convinced by some of the reports I saw of El Sayed with the lying thing. We should get into that at some point because I see some of the quotes that are taken like from the book review or whatever. It's not as presented in one of these articles, and so I'm interested in that because if he is lying, I think that's super duper relevant.
Pisco,
But
on point. Let's get through these supers because the last one's very relevant to that. So, because real quick,
Okay.
we'll get to it. So, real quick. So, purity testing doesn't equal hard. Hard implies thoughtful, substantive questions, and these purity testing interviews are not from Bad Company. And I kind of agree with like the way that you, Guy, and Hutch are coming after this, where it's like if you're purity testing and you have no goal of shifting them, it's just to highlight, look, this person's evil. I agree that this can be harmful in the long run. And like you need to have a path for them. And I think Emma did a good job, at least on the healthcare part, of saying like, can you clarify this? And McMorrow did, to say like, no, that doesn't mean we should have these social programs. But it's like, okay, if you truly believe this seems to be an implication. So why don't you clarify it, right? That's fine. That's not
That was
just
a
like
fair
kind of like
question.
evil. Yeah. Dazvadanya says, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Can I just say one thing? I think, and maybe this is wrong, Hutch, can tell me I'm wrong. I think your questions, your intuitions about what question is okay to ask, what questions are legitimate, what questions are good or bad faith, kind of ground down into what you think is true and correct about whether it's defensible or not, the Iron Dome. Like, if you felt, as they felt about the Iron Dome, that funding the Iron Dome, it's all fungible, and in a sense you're, supporting and continuing Israel's aggressive foreign policy, then I think you would think that question's more fair, honestly.
Maybe.
Yeah, if the question was whether or not like here is the literal missile for the Iron Dome, it's a little different from we're giving you the money that you have to use for this, which means they can use that money for something else that we might not support. Then it becomes like not some crazy, insane, oh, you're just purely testing on nothing. It's like, no, I think this is materially going to like making Gaza worse. And like, there's an argument there, even if I don't necessarily follow the entire thing.
But it's so clear that she's not this like rabid, super ultra Netanyahu supporting Zionist person. It's so clear that she's not in that camp. But with the crowd that I'm talking about, you're either that or you're them calling for a one-state solution. And I just think it's a really counterproductive kind of purity testing. So, like for example, if there's a candidate who, let's say, there's like 20% of their constituency that are Jewish or something like that, or that are pro-Israel or something like that, and they say that Israel has committed war crimes. They support maybe withholding aid, codifying some kind of new relationship with Israel. If they support like cutting funds to Israel, but maybe they don't say the word genocide. Like, should those people be purity tested like out of the party? Like, should they be labeled as like genocide supporters because maybe they don't want to use that particular language for whatever reason?
No, I
Probably not
don't think that you should be
genocide
pushed out of the
supporters, no.
party because you don't think that the Gazan genocide is a genocide. That's kind of like a legal opinion as to whether it fits the legal definition of genocide. So no, not there. But like, if you're,
Well, that's what they
if
do.
you're going to be,
that's what
Okay.
they do.
yeah, no, I
Yeah,
know they do that. I don't agree.
but-
I'm not saying that I agree with lefties on everything they do and that they're all wonderful and amazing. But just that, in the questions of legitimate questions or fair questions or bullshit question or bullshit framing, right? I have a pretty high tolerance, maybe more of a tolerance than you or I, for like bullshittery in the questions or framing the question, just because I expect candidates to be asked questions that are bullshit framing. And it's up to the candidate to express why the framing is bad or to deal with this kind of like unbiased, asymmetric media situation. That's true of Biden, where I think that there was an asymmetric media situation, and that's true of our Democratic candidates. And so that's all I'm saying is that, like, I think candidates should be prepared for it.
let's get through some of these. So Josiah says, "Hey, the Jon Stewart was actually tough on Obama. It gave him infamously hard interviews." I was unaware of that, but I guess maybe the other Dems, I think, was kind of what Ben was alluding to. That he does give a lot more like friendly, amicable stuff, and I remember him hiding behind the idea of like
He's
well,
given
I'm
some
just a
hand
comedian,
jobs.
right?
I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
He's given some hand jobs.
But he also did a lot of like populist brain rot for like 20 years. You know, he's been pretty consistent on that front too. Like the kind
That
of
is Jon Stewart.
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah,
both side
100%.
bad kind of stuff, yeah.
At the start of this administration, I thought that he was totally like both sides, kind of Democrats, also bad, also bad. I think honestly, frankly, I'm most impressed with Mehdi Hassan when he does his questions, because he will bring on, for example, an Iranian foreign minister, an Iranian ambassador, and just grill him on war crimes committed by Iran, violations of international law, and he'll do that also of populist candidates. And so, oftentimes, I do think that Mehdi Hassan, and sometimes from areas where you wouldn't expect, certain lefty, not all lefty podcasters, not all lefty news people are built the same, and some I think have a more eager willingness to ask tough questions.
Mehdi is tough but fair. Like he's one of the best interviewers alive, But I would say overall he's like quite fair. Like even though he has a partisan bend, I genuinely think he's like pretty fucking fair when he does his interviews, and it's okay to be tough with people. So that's an example of me saying that tough interviews are fine. It's fine to ask pointed questions, and yeah.
All right, next one from Meta. Thank you. These shows attempt to villainize these candidates to their audience instead of actually displaying another option for a Democratic election. And yeah, I think you guys have a valid criticism there, where it's like when they are just villainizing, like, look how evil this Democrat is, even if you turn around and support them in the general, like, you've done kind of a disservice to know that, like, a lot of these people are now just not going to vote for this person because you've painted them as like, no, you failed the purity test, you don't deserve a vote, period, even if you did win the primary. And I disagree with that. So.
And it extends beyond just the person they're talking to. I think it has an effect on their audience that the Democratic Party in general is bad too.
Booing at the state convention in Michigan is so toxic. That's crazy. That's crazy.
What do they do?
They booed Stevens and McMorrow. Maybe just Stevens, but there was a Michigan state convention for the Democratic Party, and I think when Stevens got there, all of Syed's people were like loudly booing her and like walking out of the convention. It's just like took me right back to 2016. I was like, motherfucker.
The thing is, I can just see myself booing Marie Glusenkamp-Perez, booing Jared Golden. I can see myself booing Jared Polis.
Oh, I can see you doing that, Pisco.
Okay, but like,
sense. Yeah.
But you guys wouldn't be. I would think it's appropriate in those contexts to do those boos. I mean, there is something, and I know you guys want to discount polls a lot of times. I know it. But the Democratic Party, there is a disconnect, and it's not just media stuff. It's the heart and soul of this party is not convinced by our own leadership, and that's a reality.
But Pisco, I wouldn't boo somebody advocating for Medicare for all, or somebody saying that I'd like to see more people recognize this as a genocide. I wouldn't boo those people because they're a part of my party. They're they're fighting for what I'm fighting for.
So is Fetterman's part of your party. Fetterman's part of your party.
And I defend Fetterman.
You wouldn't boo Fetterman if he showed up somewhere?
No, I would.
I would
not
say,
boo Fetterman
fuck
at all.
you.
In fact, I would go
Fuck
out of
you,
my
you
way.
oaf. Get out of the Senate with your fucking shorts.
Oh, and when we win 4 seats in the midterms and John Fetterman decides to switch parties because everybody was so mean to him, you're going to be happy.
No, you can't say he switched because people booed him. He switched because his ideologically changed.
Absolutely.
No, he hasn't.
No.
Hang on a second. Wait, hang on a second.
So this is where we're at. You won't even boo Fetterman. Who will you boo?
No.
You'll never boo anyone.
Who has the
No,
most
because
moderate?
booing doesn't solve anything. You don't boo people on your own side, your own team. It's like booing your own family. Would you do that to a family member? No.
I'd boo my family.
I mean, it depends on the context. I can imagine some situations, and I can imagine some situations, and I think that I think where that leads is it's like in most circumstances inappropriate to pressure Democrats in a way that.
What if you have a family member that's in a band, and they're just bombing? They're just so bad. Would you boo in that case? Booing in general is just extremely rude. If you think about it. So if, let's say you have a sibling that is the lead singer for a band and their voice is cracking, they're not hitting any of the notes. Do you boo them in that context? I jest.
I called Adam Schiff's office and Padilla, my 2 senators, and I said, please go to lunch with Fetterman. Please be friends with him, because I'm terrified this guy is going to switch parties or become independent and give the chamber to the Republicans. And some people say he's going to do it anyways. He's going to do it anyways.
I don't
well,
think he's going to.
Can we
I really
say
don't.
we tried as hard as possible to keep him within the caucus? Because I read a political
Why
story
would
the
you
other
want
week
to
that
do that?
he's hanging out with Republicans nonstop because nobody wants to talk to him. So
He also-
I think
he
that
also wants to
matters.
run
It
for
does. How
president.
you treat people matters. Yes.
There was also some reporting that he wants to run for president, which is insane. He's like another kind of cinema situation. But who has the most
Wait,
moderate?
wait.
No, hold on. Who has the most moderate voting record in the Senate?
Your mom.
Most moderate
Most
voting
moderate?
record out of the Democrats?
According to who? I don't
like,
know what the
voted for
metric is there.
Trump's, like,
I mean, like voting with the
Trump's
party and
agenda more
voting with
often?
the Republicans. Like who would you guess?
Oh, with
This
the
is
Someone
Fetterman
from one of
is-
these
Fetterman-
states.
Fetterman is not even
Fetterman,
close.
Warnock, or
No, it's not
Fetterman's
Fetterman.
like-
He's not. No, I think he's like right in the median, if not to the left of the median. It's Warnock. Warnock has the most conservative slash moderate voting record in the Senate. Nobody talks about him. I understand that like
Yeah, so-
Fetterman is provocative, but
a lot of
you
these
know.
metrics are imperfect and like relate to not the votes that like I most care about, and certainly in terms of things like the attitude against Trumpism and the attitude against MAGA. When you're saying like half your party has Trump derangement syndrome, and on the war, right? I don't see Warnock supporting the war, right? So like not all votes are made equal, and I always have like I kind of look to my left, look to my right, and I'm a little suspicious at some of these metrics, and I would want to know from
But-
where
but-
that was being assessed.
Pisco, would you rather we control the Senate for the last 2 years with John Fetterman in our caucus, or the
Absolutely.
Republicans do by
Absolutely.
expelling him not being a part?
Yeah, but I just don't think that's inconsistent with what I'm doing, right?
So,
Like,
so
my-
do you think?
my-
Do
yeah.
you think it helps
he
or
should bring it
hurts
back to booing.
constantly criticize John Fetterman in order to keep
think it
him
helps.
within our caucus? You think it
No,
helps?
no, no. It helps on another metric, right? Where it helps is internal Democratic compliance. And I had this exchange with someone on Twitter with regard to Jared Polis. They're like, he's 8 months until he's gone. Like, he's term limited. What is he going to do? What's going on? Like, why would you want to push for resignation or impeachment? And there's another thing that's important here, which is internal Democratic Party compliance. I have a news break for a lot of you guys, unfortunately. There are an alarming amount of cucks in our party. There are an alarming amount of people who just are weak and need to be culled out. And they need to know, they need to fear the Democratic base every time they're going to cuck to MAGA. And so that's why it's important to put the pressure on some of these weak cucks like Don Fetterman from an internal Democratic compliance perspective. So if someone like Jared Polis gets censured by his own party, gets condemned by his own party, by Michael Bennett, by other members of the Colorado, that puts the fear of God into anyone who would be weak on MAGA corruption and to try to be a free rider, which is what Jared Polis tried to do. Jared Polis wants to be a free rider. He wants to take from the Democratic base, and he wants to also get bona fides from MAGA and from these independent bullshit like enlightened centrists. He can't do that. He needs to pick a side when it comes to these corruption issues, and hopefully this will show in the future if a Democratic Party official or someone in the Senate role or someone in a state leadership role tries to do a similar or the same thing that Polis did, they'll think twice about it because they'll know their future in Democratic politics is over. That's a value.
Let's try to get through these guys because otherwise we're never going to get to topic number 2. But another one from Josiah. Guys, who wins tomorrow in Texas? Paxton, Corin, how do we feel about Texas in general?
I haven't seen the numbers. Have you guys?
Paxton's going to win now. Paxton's is like 10 points ahead in the recent poll, and I think he's going to win, yeah.
Paxton, I think, is going to win based on the previous primaries that Trump has weighed in on with Cassidy and Massey. So if those guys couldn't win, then I think Cornyn's cooked. And I think it's great for us. Win-win situation. They're going to have to spend $100 to $200 million trying to defend that seat in Texas. And that's money that won't be spent in Maine and North Carolina and on and on. And plus, Ken Paxton is going to drag Republicans down all across the nation because all these terrible stories about him.
He's so corrupt.
He's so corrupt that his senior staff in 2020, I believe, turned him into the authorities. And then the Republican-controlled House in Texas impeached him, though he wasn't convicted in the Senate. So this guy is a mess.
I'm
And
ready to
also-
lock in. I'm ready to lock in a Kalshi bet for Tallarico.
No way.
I'm sure it
The
did. It
Blexit is
definitely
happening? Yeah.
It
We'll see.
increases Tallarico's odds, but also
I think
finally,
it does, yeah.
John Cornyn is pretty well liked in the Senate from what I've read. He ran for majority leader, and And so they're pissed, and now you're seeing some blowback from that. So it's going to be a bit of more of a rocky road for Trump through the end of the year because of.
And it's not just Murkowski. I think it's also people like Graham. It's also people who have relationships on the Hill from the Senate perspective. So they're pretty mad about this. And Trump could have done this way earlier too, but they spent so much money on this primary. So yeah, it's another example of Trump just being an egomaniac and just not thinking about anyone else in his party and setting up for the future.
I just feel like the threshold to call for a resignation should be really high. And Pisco, I love you. You're my boy, and you're my boy, and I love you. But,
Overturning an election.
So I want to paint you a picture.
Wait, Pisco. We got to get through these. We could go forever. Dark Money dropped from Ben. What's wrong with an agenda? So this is in reference to the left saying, hey, we're having an agenda when we ask these questions. Why are we doing that? What the media must do by being a nonpartisan shtick in the year of our Lord 2026? I think you can answer this one the best.
I will just say that I think we're looking at what the right is doing, and they have a bunch of cheerleaders in their new media space who will amplify the messaging and will stand up for their leaders no matter how crazy their ideas are. And I'm not saying we have to go full NPC and, yes, Trump deserves the ballroom, But I think there's lessons to be learned there that maybe some cheerleading from our side would be very helpful for our leaders.
Is Benjamin from Progressive Victory? Is that
He's
right?
the head of Progressive Victory.
Okay, so
That's why.
so you can
Hell
have,
yeah, he should come on Live and Learn. Yes, 100%.
you should, yes, yeah.
Okay. Well,
you
well,
can-
speaking of which, he says, do you guys want to have Abdul on? Because he's talking to him. So
Let's do it. Let's do it.
fucking
Yeah.
do it,
sure.
I would say,
I'll be the
yeah.
nice questioner. Me and Soy will ask the
gets rid
nice
of the
questions since
key.
we're the tankies, and
Well, you'll
we'll get the
see.
tough questions.
Let's all dress up like doctors too. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Wait,
all
wait,
dress
hold
up
on,
and, like,
hold on. So it's fine to have like an insurgent force within the Democratic Party. Like that's democracy. So if they want to go out there and if they can convince enough primary voters to support their candidates, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but like speaking of Progressive Victory, what was the tweet that they put out about Kamala like a couple weeks ago and then they deleted
That
it?
was crazy.
that was fucking crazy. I literally DM'd Ben about it. I was like, hey, what the fuck is this, dude? Like, this,
What
What was it
exactly
like? You'll
did
be
you
in a
like
do?
a vote-
concentration
a
camp?
vote for Kamala as a vote for the gas chambers. That was
Wild.
That
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Gotta watch
Like
that.
you don't like you can have
Yeah,
policy
who
preferences.
wrote that? Do
You
we
can have
know
policy
who-
preference.
They
We need
they
to-
remain unnamed to this day.
Well, I think it's important. Like, you're gonna say something like that. That's
Yeah,
pretty
that's crazy.
ridiculous, dude.
We-
Like
we-
you need to own up because that's pretty frustrating to hear something like
I've
that.
been telling Ben, I was like, look, I understand you want to emulate the fighting candidates, but if you're an org that you want candidates to work with, like, you gotta tone that shit down a lot.
You're not
That's
Wendy's,
not
okay? You're not the
okay.
Wendy's account. It's cute
You're
when the
not the
Wendy's
Wendy's
account,
account.
and even then, like the Wendy's account, it's kind of lost a lot of its luster. But you got to be careful with that. Kamala will not be putting people in the gas chamber. I think that's fair.
Well, the implication was Kamala would side in such a way that allows fascists to win, but even so, it's still optically
Jesus.
just fucking awful.
Yeah.
But like we need to have policy differences with like I think that NIMBYs are kind of dumb. I think that there's a lot of like just kind of bad policy that you see in those kind of left-wing spaces, but I don't think they're evil. I think they genuinely want more people to have healthcare and they want more people to have housing. That's fine. That's like a policy difference, whatever. I think they're misguided and we could argue about that. When they have policy differences with people, it's like it's all of a sudden their opponents in the primaries become these like pro-corporation, pro-boot, fascist enabling, genocide support. It takes on a whole new kind of substance that is counterproductive, and I have no idea how to.
But I do it to people sometimes with Jared Polis and with some of these.
Far. I mean,
No, but hang on a
even
second.
in the
So
Polis situation, though, even in the Polis situation, you're criticizing a particular thing that he did, and I agree with your
Yes.
criticism. I just think
enabling fascism and enabling MAGA corruption. That's the grounds on which I am saying that Jared
that's
Polis
different.
needs to resign.
I think that's different from like a simple policy disagreement. I think that's different from like Medicare for all versus public option. Like you are attacking him for something that I think is fair. Like he did pardon someone who like literally fucking betrayed the country and tried to end American democracy, in her own little way. And I think that was like really, really, really bad. It's just he's gone in fucking 6 months, and I just felt like calling for his resignation is a bit performative. Like it's not going to happen. He's not going to resign.
Well, no, it's intended to be performative because what I'm trying to do is trying to be part of a cleansing fire that shows the next Democratic leaders, wherever they are, that you're going to get a bigger pushback when you try this bullshit. When you try to free ride on anti-MAGA stuff, you are going to get like just destroy. And that's what I want to be the case for this party when it comes to my biggest issue is corruption. So that's why I do what I do. But if you were to accuse me, hey, you're like not part of the team because you want Jared Polis to resign in shame, I don't think that would land with people, because people would know, right? Like if you were to gauge the room here, I think people would land and say, commuting the sentence of an election criminal who is totally unrepentant, who absolutely would do it again, and whose tweets show that she's unrepentant, to like receive a $2 million check on the courtesy of the American taxpayer in like 5 months, that is unacceptable as a Democratic governor, as a leader of a Democratic state, to do that and to allow that to occur under the thumb of a federal coercion campaign, that is unacceptable, and you should have no future in Democratic politics. And I think if you were to read the room, everyone would be with me.
I'm not going to fight you too much on the Polis thing. I would just say that the Republican Party right now, they're doing a lot of purity tests around Donald Trump and the cult of personality, and it's hurt their party significantly. I think Laksha said they've lost 20 seats just because of Donald Trump's like loyalty demands.
It's not about loyalty to like this cult leader and whether or not you support Trump. It's like, hey, are you going to fucking break the rules and support election deniers? Like that should be a purity test, and I don't think we should let those people in the Democratic Party.
Well, he's out in 6 months, and he can't run again.
Good.
So, yeah.
He's got another play, though. There's a reason he did this, guys. It's not for this principled First Amendment issue. It makes no sense. And there's other disparate sentences he could have taken. There's not a coincidence that this is the one that he took. He's either bending under a federal coercion campaign, in which case, that to me almost seems like an abuse of power situation. It seems impeachable. And by the way, the Colorado Constitution doesn't just say high crimes or misdemeanors. High crimes, misdemeanors, or malfeasance, I think, in office. So there's even a lower standard there. But why the fuck? Why should we have to have these losers in charge of Democratic areas in Democratic states? We're spoiled for choice in a lot of states. I don't understand why we have to. I know they did vote for him.
Like they voted for him. The people of Colorado voted for him, and he won, and they gave him power.
I know that, but I
but
want
you
to
don't-
impose a.
You don't live in Colorado. I don't understand why you get so animated about like races in other states. Like you're not the constituent. It's not up to you. You live in New York.
Why do you care about Michigan? Fuck Michigan.
Yeah,
You're
what?
looking at fucking. This makes no
yeah.
sense, Hutch. Why do you care about anything you care about? Let's just talk about the states we live in.
What do you say? But do you see me calling for people to resign because they're taking votes that I don't like?
Maybe they
Why
would do
not?
something that would call for them to resign. I mean, why wouldn't they be able to do that and reach a threshold for you?
Well, listen, you're my boy, and I love you. You're my boy. So.
All right,
No, but come on. There's some things that Democrats can do. They can call to resign. They're not in your states.
We got to move on. You're my boy, and I love you. You're my boy.
Okay.
I'm bailing out Hutch. All right, as someone who aligns most of the
Bailing me out. You need to bail Pisco out.
PSA to girl Ken Martin on the autopsy. We need genuine people who will level with us, not artificially dodge the core criticism. Martin looked bad there. So this
And he
is
lied.
Yeah. Do you guys think that this is like?
So
hey,
here's
yeah?
what I'll say. What value is there in making the chairman of the DNC look bad on your left-wing show? What's the
It's
value there in
authenticity.
the
It's
end?
like, hey,
what is the value there
I'm
in
not.
the end?
I'm not. Like
Ken
the Trump
asked for
troll.
the interview.
I'm not-
Ken asked
he
for
asked-
it.
I understand that, Pisco, but I'm not going to make any Democrats look bad on my channel because that doesn't help my party, even if I disagree with them. Because I'm on the left, I want to see Democrats win. If my audience walks away saying, this guy's a fucking monster and he's a Democrat, I've failed at my job.
But is there zero value? Look, would you boo a Democrat who comes on and is like, and I'm for restricting all abortions? Would you say, hey, that's bad?
No,
I think
would
that's
say-
a bad policy.
I would say, I think that's a bad policy, but I wouldn't have an antagonistic hour-long interview with the guy. I'd say, look, you're part of my party, and I just think
Did I
your
miss something?
policy
Return to Freya
is
Harden.
not what I
Oh,
think
yeah,
would be
yeah.
best. But I mean, in the end, my goal is never to leave people upset at the Democrats, no matter who it is, because that's important to me.
You're not.
So
a
if we have
journalist.
El Sayed on here, we have to give him just the best,
You will
most
see.
light interview
No.
of all time.
It will be challenging, I'm sure, but it
I
will
Why
would
come-
would it be? Why
I know,
would
but
it be
I'm saying-
challenging,
I'm
Ira?
I
Right?
swear to
saying-
God, I would not grill him on this.
Yes,
I would not.
I agree.
I swear to God.
I would not give
Why
him a hard
not?
time.
Why not?
I'm not a fucking journalist. I'm a partisan Democrat. Like I want the party to succeed, and
But
so
they are
I mean, I
journalists,
might
or
ask
at
like
least
one
they're
question that could be
fancy
slightly
themselves as
challenging,
that.
but I would not go in there with an agenda to try to get the audience to think that he's evil.
Yes,
That's not
here-
the
that's the
agenda
difference.
isn't I want you to think they're evil. The agenda is I disagree with you, and I either
No,
want you to
stop it.
agree
No,
with me.
that's not. Hang on.
I
That wasn't Matt. Matt was not saying I just disagree. Matt was
It's
accusing
not just
McMorrow.
disagree. It's we have fundamental, what he views as purity testing disagreements, and I want to know why, which is a very legitimate thing. If I have a guy on who is pro like abortion laws, like getting rid of abortion, that's a deal breaker for me, and I want to know why, and I want to talk about that. That's a valid criticism. I'm not going to just say, hey, look, you're a Democrat, so it's okay. We're not going to talk about that. That just seems insane.
if this is it's a big straw man here, a guy running as a Democrat who hates abortion and wants to outlaw it. But there are some areas in the country that are more conservative, and maybe someone will come on here and say, look, in order to win as a Democrat in my area, I've got to be more anti-abortion. So that's how the conversation would go.
Cuellar has held that seat since like 2004. It has turned into one of the more conservative Democrat seats. I think the most conservative Democrat seat in the entire country. And so he's the only Democrat in the entire congressional elected Democrats that is pro-life. So like, would it be better if a Republican held that seat? Now we're getting back into the Ezra Klein kind of debate. I don't know if we want to do that, but yeah. So
I want to respond to what IRS said, because it's really crucial in how I view our role, right? Because I just can't be the end point of the DNC and to just be only positive and relentlessly positive. There needs to be a give and take in my view, and that yes, we need to promote Democrats, we need to promote strong candidates, all that stuff, but we also need to apply pressure internally to the party, and sometimes that means using our voice. And I just think that there have been people who are way too harsh in unfair ways to Democrats before, but there are some attacks at Democrats I think are fair, and not just are fair, need to be voiced so we don't get into the same mess that we did in 2024. Because if we had listened to the Bidens of the world back then, which is don't talk about it. Why are you guys all talking about Biden's bad performance when it came to the debate? Like, Biden might not have dropped out and we would have been down to 42 seats in the Senate, and that would have been a disaster.
I was with the Pot Bros when they did that, for the record. I mean, it took me a couple weeks longer to get on board, but I thought that they made fair criticisms, and I appreciated the honesty.
I was with AOC and Bernie, who were the first ones to come out and say Biden's our guy still, and we're going to back him up. So, but Pisco, to your point, I'm just saying.
Can we get through these? We're never going to talk about the subpoena.
Okay, we have to talk about Hassan.
Super chat.
Yeah, this is the one time I want to talk about Hassan, guys. All right, Saeed lied about his background. That's a fair hit. That speaks to his character. McMorrow is getting called evil over policy differences. First of all, I don't even know if anyone's really calling her evil on the show. That might be the portrayal, but like these are both, in my opinion, valid criticisms to go after someone for lying about their history, for a policy, like a significant policy difference, especially in the primary. That's the time to do it. Why do I draw the lines? Why would I vote for you over El Saeed? Like, I think these are completely valid things to be asking.
Well,
Bad Company says, how do you square calling someone a genocide endorser and then voting for her? Are you doing is doing this hurting your chances? Yeah, lesser of two evils, which these people never actually commit to when it's the general, which is really fucking annoying. But yeah, like if I think you're aiding Israel in the genocide and I say, hey, you guys are aiding them, and then you win the primary, that doesn't mean I can't vote for you. I still have to vote for you. Like, but I understand.
Hey, but you've painted yourself into a corner now unnecessarily,
But that's what we were demanding of lefties when it came to 2024. They took the view that Kamala Harris was complicit in endorsing and helping the genocide, and we said vote for her, notwithstanding your belief there. Like we said, even if you believe that, because it'll be better for the Palestinians. So we can't say it's just like a desire or some kind of ask that we would never call for. Like we have called for that.
They were too far gone at that point. There was no saying.
Most voted for the Democrats, though. That's we agree. Most of them voted for Democrats. Sure, but in spite of it,
I have to question their strategic acumen, like their political strategy of elevating one of the lowest salience issues in the country to be the #1 issue within the Democratic Party, in the divisive way that they're doing it. I just like, what is the upside if the hierarchy of needs right now is like beating Republicans, and then under that would be like policy stuff? What is the strategy there?
I like how he just
elevating
begs the
this issue
question
in this way during these primaries. I just don't understand it. It just doesn't
pressure
make any sense to me.
Democrats.
Well, there's pressure, and then there's tarring and feathering people as genocide supporters. It's fucking psychotic to accuse the VP of enabling a genocide, like the fucking VP sets foreign policy. It's so stupid, but whatever.
All right, Hexby wants a example of leftist constant purity testing that is a real and tangible benefit to the Democratic Party. I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but I'd say the Medicare for All conversation that kind of Bernie pushed a lot further in 2016. This was a purity test, and this has moved the country further left in a way that I'm okay with. And I don't think this.
Yeah,
is
they're
like,
just going to say that's not a purity test because Bernie endorsed Hillary and Bernie endorsed Joe Biden, and so it's a game of words, right? Like anytime you bring up an example, it's not going to be real purity testing because that was different.
That wasn't real
Bernie's different.
purity testing. Fair. Yeah. Silver MB says, Hutch and I have to stop using the word criticism. That's a misleading euphemism for what these lefty media figures are doing. It's not getting your totally correct point across. Yeah, because I don't want you guys to come across as saying we can't criticize Dems. Of course we can. I know you guys think that. It's the specific way in which the criticism is not meant as like a, hey, like, can we come to an agreement, right? It's like you are just saying, look how evil this person is, and then moving on, right? That's kind of your problem.
Yes, plus, like I said, it bleeds over to the whole party, and then these people end up hating the Democratic Party, and then I think that's not helping.
It's a narrative versus like a criticism. I think there's a pretty big distinction there.
What's
Okay,
that?
Trip
distinction?
says
Well, the narrative that they have is that basically the Democratic Party, anyone outside of like their kind of faction within the Democratic Party are, I've already said it like a few times now, but like pro-corporation, pro-war, fascist enablers. These are very common.
And that's a narrative, not
insults
a
that you hear.
criticism.
That's a narrative, yeah. And so if all of your line of questioning is in service of that narrative, and you're not actually asking questions and being curious about their positions, if you're just pushing a narrative instead, then just don't call that journalism. And to your point, Pisco, it's like Democratic Party politicians can and candidates can choose to go into those venues, but they should know what they're walking into and they should be prepared for it. They need the Zoomers. They need the Zoomers on the staff.
Fair enough. Trip says, if you're anti-establishment or hate Dems, you're not in the tent. From y'all, is there any signs that Dems won't accept non-tent voters? And is there any room for grilling voters as politicians? I say yes.
It's so confused. This tent thing is just fucking stupid. You guys are, if you're using the tent thing unironically, except to reference like the discourse, I think you're an idiot. You need to find what you mean by tent. Like, do you just mean like party registration? Do you mean I like you and you're a Democrat? Like, really, it just is the stupidest fucking framing.
I take the tent to mean being on the same team about beating Republicans.
Okay, so just wanting Republicans to lose, right?
Yeah,
is that all you mean by 10? So,
flipping
okay,
it-
so Nick, so I want you to say Nick Fuentes is part of the team because that was the condition under which I want you to say that. No, because you know that's not what we're talking about.
That is what I'm
Pisco,
talking about. If you're within the tent, not Nicholas Fuentes, because we don't allow.
So you just add to the rule. You add to the rule. The rule gets bigger and it starts encompassing more than just a simple test.
About this.
That's
It's
yes,
not
the rule is
nitpicky.
clear,
Don't say
but
them.
yes.
Let's not say things that we don't agree with.
Language. We're talking about people that are like welcomed culturally or whatever within like the Democratic Party. There are limits there. For example, Nazis. We generally don't allow Nazis. And so everybody else that's like a registered Democrat or votes Democrat or advocates for Democrats, it is about like putting that first and foremost, like blue no matter who. That's what it means to be in the fucking tent. That's what it means.
So tent means wanting Democrats to win, but be within a range of cultural acceptability. Is that all what it means to be in the tent?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so then
Pisco,
when
let's
you
not
said,
have- wait,
so
wait,
when you
Pisco,
said,
please.
wait
No,
a
wait,
second,
we
wait,
can't. No, please
let
don't.
me get this one out. Let me get this one out. So when you said you would consider a white nationalist as part of the 10, or what you if they could consistently win in these states, that they are within that range of cultural acceptability.
Sure. You know what? If like the people of like Texas's 7th district nominate someone who's got abhorrent views, then I don't know. I'd have to cross that bridge when I get there. And maybe I'm being a little tongue in cheek about maximally blue no matter who. But generally speaking, if you want to focus on outlier cases, you can do that.
Let's shit on Hassan. Let's shit on Hassan.
Generally speaking, it means like valuing, like wanting the Democratic Party to win. Just generally speaking.
Like Fuentes genuinely wants the Democratic Party to win.
You
He
know
does.
what I'm talking
All
about.
right, Pisco, I'm showing this one now first, which is Pisco just mentally disabled, yes or no?
Yeah, in a way I am. In a way.
All right. Ben says, why can't we love the party, the parts of the party worth loving and hate the party for what we don't like?
I agree.
We kind of
like
already
this.
covered this, but I
We
understand.
shouldn't
what
hate
you're leaning
anybody
at,
in our party. Why are we hating anybody? It's
Because
okay
they
to
suck.
disagree. No,
Polis
but
sucks.
that's the problem is the hatred. Like it's like, come on, man.
Is the
We are the
Democratic
party of love.
Wait, hang on. Is the Democratic Party stronger, neutrally, like the same, or weaker as a result of this polarization that's happened, that's manifest in the last 10 or 15 years?
It
Weaker.
depends because
It's
the people
weaker.
who criticize
Not-
it
no,
might say,
it doesn't depend. It's weaker.
No,
It's
it
just
does
objectively
because
weaker.
they might say it's weaker because you've let people in that are disaffecting voters and say, wait, this is
They're
not
just
my
wrong.
Democratic Party.
I don't care. They're just wrong. I don't care. Like, we are a big tent.
Okay. All right. Josiah says Georgia Governor Brian Kemp recently signed a bill making municipal elections nonpartisan to increase the likelihood of conservatives winning. Should Dem governors do the same for rural areas in their states? This is another fire with fire. Josiah's oh, he's coming out. He's strong. He wants it. And I say yes. What do you guys think?
I think yes, subject to, in any particular context, I think that there are certain norms which I consider to be fundamental that you don't ever cross. And so for me, that's a really high threshold. That's like constitutional violations, knowing law breaking. But if this is not tantamount to violating norms inconsistent with, or that are to violate would be inconsistent with representative democracy, I would be in favor of fighting fire with fire. Yes.
Isn't that what happened with the Georgia Supreme Court thing? Didn't they make it nonpartisan, and that's why? Yeah.
Guys, thoughts on Massey losing the primary? I think this is, you
Yeah.
know, if anyone
Big
thought the
issue.
Trump Republicans were really turning around and being
Jank
sensible,
Uger, where are they,
absolutely
Jank?
not.
Where are the right-wing populists base to destroy the Trump colluded top of the Republican Party? Like, there's no evidence whatsoever for this thing that was promised by Jank Uger, which was the uprising of the populists within the right-wing party. I rewatched his discussion with Charlie Kirk at Turning Point, where he's like praising them for a revolution well done. And then just a couple days ago when Massey gets, or a week ago, when Massey gets ousted, he just says the Republican Party is done. We knew that when Trump was elected. You were the person who was spreading this fake meme that the right-wing populist base were part of the same movement. They're not. They're our enemy. They're not in the tent, however you want to describe that. And certainly they don't have any control over the actual movements of the party or the country.
Jank is at Tim Pool 49 state landslide levels of wrong in his like post 2024 analysis.
Yeah.
Jeez. All right, guys, we're going to get through 4 more of these, but we got half an hour left. We've not even gotten to our second topic. So real quick, I don't think purity testing around Trump hurt the Republicans. I think it saved them. What hurt the party is the person that did this strat for was Trump.
Benjamin,
so it's like
listen, Benjamin, you're objectively wrong here. Like Donald Trump elevated so many bad, awful election denying candidates in 2022, and we picked up a Senate seat, you know, the same cycle that we lost the House. And so, I mean, this has happened so many times. Like they pushed out, you know, quote unquote reasonable Republicans and elevated just cranks and just lost 20 fucking
There's
seats.
a reason. But there's a reason for that. And so I actually think that what Trump was doing was rational on his view. And this is why. Because it tightened his control over the party. Just like we, I think, should apply internal Democratic pressure to our candidates who are too out there, not on everyone. But Trump was able to, through this tactic, even though it shed some seats that he could have won, for sure. What did it show? Through fear that he was in control of the party.
Look at the party,
when you look at
Pisco.
he's in control of it.
But-
he would rather control a weaker party than to have divided rule in a stronger party.
What is the
And
logic here? So we should emulate this?
I'm not saying that we should emulate that, but we should look at the whole board here. And the board isn't just about winning seats for their own sake. It's about winning seats and having a message in a direction that we all agree is the right direction. I'm not saying fully emulate Trump.
We're never
What
going to
Trump
have
understood. We
we're
have to
just
understand
not
the rationality of Trump. Trump is, in some sense, rational with how he exercises power over these different actors because he's not maximizing Republican wins overall. He's trying to maximize Republican wins while he dominates the party. And on that view, it's a lot more rational than what people give him credit for.
Well, that doesn't mean it's strategic or beneficial. And I
Well,
just
it's clearly
we're
not
never,
good, yeah.
we're never going to have that kind of consensus in the Democratic Party. It's just not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen. So
I'm not saying that we sorry.
No, no,
I just
no,
want to
no.
say one more
Temper
time. No,
doesn't
I want to say
no.
no.
I'm cutting off. I'm bailing out
Sorry. I'm not gonna. So I'm just gonna be clear. I did not say we want the same thing that Trump said. What I'm saying is you need to consider Trump's other incentives, and one of those incentives is Republican compliance with a norm. That norm is respecting what Trump wants. I'm not saying we need to emulate that 100%. All I'm saying is I do think there ought to be more Democratic compliance with some things, and those things are corruption, anti-MAGAs, and etc.
All right, death awaits real quick. I live in Colorado. We want Polis out. Maybe there's a reason he got the entire Dem party here condemning him. Peace goes right. Maybe Polis had to do it, but the optics are bad, and we can't accept it. Yeah, I think I'm going to defer to the person who lives in Colorado since none of us do, and this is the only voter's opinion that matters. Last one, or no, second to last. Quinn Holton So the lessons Guy learned from the MAGA was to become a mindless, spineless
Disavow,
fluffer and not have
disavow.
strong principles. Oh my God! What site did he
Disavow.
buy his comfy knee pads from? Wow, that one's harsh. Jesus Christ. We got mentally ill Pisco. We've got Fluffer Guy.
No, but-
All right, two mean
listen,
supers.
you can
for
express
one for me,
that.
one for Hutch. All
I'd
right?
give Ossoff
You
a
can
hand
express
job.
you can express that in a better way, Chatter. You can express that
Yeah,
you
you-
think that there should be more criticism in a better way.
Yeah, I should have read that one first. I think we're not. If you guys are just gonna be
My
fucking that
point
mean,
is, our party has room for a lot of voices, and for some reason there are creators on the left that do not appreciate those different voices, and it's their way or the highway.
And
those
they're
are some very
convinced-
loud voices right now in our party, unfortunately.
And they're convinced, they're utterly convinced, they have deep conviction about this, that like everybody is kind of secretly on their side and the establishment is stopping them. And meanwhile, we just had another poll came out last week. 50% of the party thinks that the party should move towards the center. 25%
Yeah.
thinks that it should move left. 25% think it should stay the same. And
A
so
majority
they're-
says we should
they
move
are
left
so
on
out of
healthcare.
touch on this front. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. We need to move on. We do need to get to
Okay,
the-
last one. I think hating Dems and being anti-establishment is a fair take for people who are not in the tent. They don't even want to be Pisco. It's okay, vote blue. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know
If
what
you don't want to
tent
be in the
means. You
tent,
still
you're
have
not
to define
allowed
it.
in the
You
tent.
still have to define
We
the
don't-
tent.
There's no tent. All right, guys. Subpoenaing Hassan. What do we think? Are we?
Did it actually occur?
about
I'm
it.
like seeing mixed reports about whether there was a subpoena.
Fox News said it did, and they're, I understand the opinion
Fair and
section over there
balanced.
sucks, but they reported it as fact.
I think
have a take.
this is dangerous. I think the idea that we're taking someone who I ideologically disagree with, but we're saying, okay, our fascist Trump government is going to be cracking down on their like Cuba trip with some bullshit like legalese of whether or not they stayed in the right hotel or gave money to who. Like, this is so much clearly to me an intimidation tactic, and I think we need to come together and oppose this. But that's where I'm sitting.
Well, I don't think you're going to find people that disagree with you. The problem is the hypocrisy, where we see clips now of Hassan laughing at Adam Schiff, who was being investigated for
that.
fraud, saying, I hope he gets locked up. He took money from Israel. So, the sympathy for Hassan is just not there, man.
That's my position. It is objectively bad, and this does look like it's targeting. And very, very few. I looked it up. It seems like very
So
few
it's
people
okay as long as it's
are criminally
against
charged
people
for
that
these
you
kinds of
disagree
things.
with.
There's a question about
Wow.
So the hotel that they stayed at, that's public info, and that is
First
on the
they came
sanctions
for
list.
the
It just is.
fucking
It's
Mets
like controlled by
fans,
the
and I
Cuban
said
military.
nothing.
But Hassan says that he talked to OFAC, which is like the Office of, I don't know what it is, the Foreign Affairs, whatever. And they told him to stay there.
Under the
And
Treasury.
I believe him because I don't think Hassan Piker wants to go to prison. Like, I genuinely don't think that. I don't
Hot
think he's
take.
I don't think he's stupid enough to just not clear that kind of a trip. And
Hot
so
take.
it does look like targeting. We know that this administration targets people for political reasons. That's really bad. And to IRI's point, it's also literally fucking impossible to feel sympathy for him, especially when you should pull that clip up of him like salivating at the thought of Adam Schiff going to prison. Like when you see that
Gavin will
clip,
show
it's
it,
just like,
but is that can we agree that's not a reason to be okay with this? That's like
No,
a
I'm
hey,
not
it's
cheering
shit.
it
It's not a
on.
reason to be
You-
okay with it.
I'm
Right,
not
'cause
cheering
I'm
it
like-
on. I'm not cheering it
Because
on.
I think
Are you
I think the
not?
hypocrisy is gross, but that's not a reason for me to be like, and therefore he should face the consequences. It's not like a reap what you sow
No,
Schadenfreude
nobody-
moment for me.
Some people on Twitter are
Nobody's
doing it
gonna take
IRI.
that.
Some people are doing it, but like
Some
Yeah,
people are.
people
That's
are.
insane. Those people are stupid. If they think Hassan should be punished with this weaponization of the DOJ, it's just another instance of the DOJ being weaponized against people they disagree with. The problem is Hassan needed to stand up when it happened to Adam Schiff, and he didn't.
And
Yeah, and
before
he
that
should.
too, I mean, and before that too with the election, the hypocrisy is fucking gross. I mean, you have people who are supporting all sorts of, allies that you wouldn't expect at this time. James Comey, other targets of weaponized DOJ who happen to be Republicans who fell out with the administration, and so
Remember
we
the
should all
public-
see.
Remember the post when he fucking thought he was DMing Bondi and he was just like, it's really important that you fucking prosecute Barack Obama.
Yeah. So all this shit is disgusting, and I condemn the hypocrisy 100%. And it shows you, right, that the people who have been right the entire time are the resistance libs, are the never Trump Republicans who have said the biggest issue here is corruption and weaponization, and that's going to affect all of us and everything that we do. And so it's fucking gross. That hypocrisy 100% is gross. That said, I'm not going to stand by with this administration, which is corrupt in its nature, which is being led by a bunch of bozos who are on the take who are making excuses for this $1.8 billion scam of the American taxpayer, the Qatar airplanes and all that stuff, and assume that their intentions are good or at least workable. No, this is a bullshit move by the administration, who is not just trying to go after the voices that it disagrees with and who criticize it, but also to prepare for a war with Cuba, an intervention in Cuba, another illegal war, another exercise of fascist imperialist power by this administration and by Trump. And so, no, I stand 10 tones down against the administration, against the subpoena, and fuck everyone who says that they support it.
I don't disagree with anything you said, Pisco, and I'm with you. And you know, I even accept that Hassan wouldn't do the same thing for me or people on the left, or that like Adam Schiff. But I still would have your position that there's nothing to celebrate here at all.
Yeah, that's my exact position. It's literally just like I'm not going to cheer it on. I'm not going to downplay the significance of an administration possibly targeting a Twitch streamer is such a unbelievable escalation. But man, Hassan makes it literally impossible to feel sympathy for in this spot.
Well, and
from his
I would
own
be
rhetoric.
curious-
It's not
I'd be
about
curious if he
sympathy
ever
for Hassan.
responded to when JD Vance said that they're investigating 2 social media creators in Florida, which seemed like it was destiny
no
at the time, to
Cobras.
see if he laughed about that. I'm sure he thought that was hilarious.
Look, it's just
Yeah,
it's
no,
line 1 of the poem, right? First they came for the communists, and I said, look, I don't like this guy that much, but goddamn, I'll stand in front of the bullets because this is bullshit. You can't have a fascist government cracking down like this.
And listen,
it's an
I
intimidation
support
tactic. I don't give a shit. Yeah, I don't give a shit if it's hypocritical that he doesn't support it. Whatever.
Yeah.
He does a lot of things I don't like,
I agree.
but that doesn't mean we can go after him. And we
I don't
shouldn't
want him
let
to
it
go to prison. Definitely, you know, that's crazy.
Do you guys
Not
remember?
over this.
No, not over, not over the, but maybe for something animal abuse.
Maybe something else. Not the,
Yeah, no, I'm joking. But do you guys remember there was a moment where he was predicting
All
that
right, that's our new
Russia
chest
wouldn't
once we level up.
invade Ukraine or something, and you know, and he owned up to that it was a mistake. But like afterwards, it wasn't just that or that he had the wrong prediction. I think he did, but he the kind of tone in which he took. All right, guys, we were wrong. Now, what are you gonna do about it, Joe? Like, what? Like, just the kind of like, okay, you were wrong before, you were a hypocrite before, and now it's like we all need to stand together. And what the fuck are you libs doing anyway? That attitude, I think, is like corrosive and fucking dumb. But it's still, yes, notwithstanding hypocrisy, notwithstanding it being annoying, you got to be 100% against the regime on this, 100% with the lefties who hate you and want to destroy you.
The other
I
thing
know,
too,
I know it sucks. Though.
Bad Company in my chat brings up a point. Somebody else brought it up in my chat earlier. He did a super chat too. So he said Hassan was saying Biden should have launched an investigation into Manchin's daughter to make him comply with Dem policy. Authoritarians, right or left, can kick rocks. I mean, like, yeah, he was he told John Lovett to his face, like directly, yes, I think you should politicize DOJ to go after Manchin to like coerce senators to take votes that you want. And so it's literally impossible to feel sympathy. I'm sorry. I'm not going to like talk a lot about it. I'm not going to celebrate it, or I don't want him to go to jail, but it just, there's no way.
Well, yeah, but why are these issues linked in your mind, right? Like you don't feel sympathy for him, but that's not the reason you're standing against it. The reason you're standing against it is to protect yourself, to protect me, to protect
not just
your
me.
friends.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, so like
This
protecting
is like
Hassan
the
here.
ACLU saying we can let the KKK have their civil protest in the middle of our city. I fucking hate them. I hate everything they stand for. I think this is going to spread hate. And yet, I understand that by upholding this, I'm upholding free speech, and we shouldn't let the government go after anyone, no matter how horrible their ideas are. And so you have to be able to untie everything you hate about Hassan and say, this is much more an indictment of the government and their overreach of power. And I would say the exact same thing if they were going after Nick Fuentes, who I think is a fucking monster, right? So like,
All
it's
that is
not
valid.
about the person. Yeah.
All that is valid. Just don't ask me to feel sympathy. That's all I'm saying. Everything you're saying is valid.
I don't ask you to feel sympathy for Hassan. And by the way, there's another Tucker Carlson, I think, was also investigated or something for ties related to Iran. There could actually be illegal conduct at issue here. And there could actually be illegal conduct at issue with Tucker Carlson in terms of who he's talking to, potential FARA violations and stuff. And so I'm not saying that there wouldn't be potentially a plausible case against Hassan. What I'm saying, though, is they're exercising their discretion in a biased way, in my view, and that if Hassan were on the take, if he were on the team of the Department of Justice and with Trump, he wouldn't have any problems. They don't really care about this. And so it's necessarily one-sided. And I also am going to apply an inference. I think that enough corrupt conduct has occurred that you take a negative inference against the administration. And unless they show you some neutral basis, you're not going to believe them.
So just to be clear, and I'm not downplaying what's happening, when I looked into it, the only way that you can be criminally charged for this kind of a thing is if you knowingly violate a sanction. If it's not knowingly, it can be up to $200,000 per offense. So, you know, it's a pretty pricey price tag, but the likelihood that they would go after him for, like, I don't know, maybe he knew, but it's just inconceivable to me that someone like Hassan would go to Cuba, especially like, and there was like dozens of them that went. And so it's like, you would have to be profoundly stupid to do that without like clearing your plans with the government first. And I don't think
it's on
Hassan.
the government first.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Cleared his
yeah.
plans
So-
with the administration that's like subpoenaing him. So
right, that's what I'm saying. And so like, I just.
Well, he probably consulted with a lawyer. I doubt he cleared it with the administration, but I would
did.
imagine he.
I mean, he
talked
said he
to
did. I
lawyers
mean, you can.
about what
No,
he
he did.
was gonna do.
No,
Oh,
he
he
cleared
said
it
he
with the
cleared it?
organization. Yeah. That's like kind of how
With the
this works, I think,
administration
before
or
you
the
go.
With
organization.
with OFAC specifically, because they're the ones that enforce these kinds of sanctions. So, you know,
Okay.
and he would have to be really dumb not to. And so some people were speculating that he knowingly violated sanctions or whatever. I just, that makes no sense. I can't see him doing that. I don't
The
think he
Adam
wants
Schiff
to be that
comments were
kind of.
so on the nose, though. I mean, that was crazy. That was
Yeah.
just like a.
Yeah.
Makes you
Well,
furious.
and again, he would not have this position for us. If any of us were under investigation, he'd be laughing his ass off and having a great time.
All right, I guess because this is so big, I have to show it. Pisco and IRI got hate, but
Jesus.
Soy and Hutch didn't. Is it because they're on the bottom? Pisco and IRI bottoms confirmed.
This is progressive
Damn.
victory. This is by
this
the way
is the power of
confirmed. The
dark
progressive
money.
victory Twitter account is run by this person.
I would
Now that's
be
confirmed.
a top if I was a homosexual. Yes.
You would be a top?
That would
would
be
be?
my preference.
Why? You've missed out on
Why?
however many years of having stuff in your butt.
I like putting my wiener in things. What do you want?
All right, well, that's pretty gay, dude. All right, guys.
Wait,
Tulsi
are you
Gabbard,
seeing the
wanna cover this?
rumors? Sorry, go ahead. Let's do Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, do
Let's
you want to talk about? No. What rumors? What
Did you
rumors,
say rumors?
Pisco?
No. Never mind. There's some Griper related rumors. Let's not get into them.
Related
I don't know if you guys are on Griper Twitter. I follow a lot of people who I watch a lot of Nick Fuente. I'm gonna be honest with you. I watch a lot. I want to see what people are saying. I do think that there's something about their movement, and I just saw some rumors. Maybe people know anything about what I'm talking about, but put it in the chat.
You called me a Nazi sympathizer a minute ago, but you watch.
When did I do that?
Nick Fuentes. That's interesting. No, I'm just playing. I know you did.
No, Taylor's the one that says that you sound like a white supremacist. We all know who the real Nazi accuser is.
No,
When are we
let's
gonna have her
probably-
back on? By the way.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Would she agree?
We should have her on for
What do we-
Bagelgate. New York Bagelgate. You see that?
Wait, what
New York
happened
Post
there?
wrote they wrote a post how she complained about the vegan cream cheese in New York and that Mamdani should fix it. And you know what? I'm with her. I think there needs to be more vegan cream cheese. So.
Has
Hassan
she
threw
written-
shade at Mamdani actually when he did a stream either yesterday or today where he was talking about the subpoena thing and someone in chat was like, get Hassan to or get Mamdani to fight for you or whatever, and he was like, I really doubt it, bro. I'm not a concerning incident in New York City, so I don't think he's gonna do that. Which is like, yeah, you have to
Wow.
see it. I mean, it was like shade. He was like expressing
Poor Hassan.
disappointment.
Always the victim. Can't catch a break.
Folks,
Last
Tulsi
thing,
Gabbard
though,
left.
Yeah. What are you guys' thoughts? I mean, to me, this is just extra indication of rats fleeing the ship. Tulsi Gabbard is just like another, like, hey, this is going horribly. Like, I don't want to be in charge of this. But also, it seems there was like internal pressure in
Yeah.
the reporting that I had been
But
reading.
apparently she was being pushed out, and sure looks like Trump is not a fan of women. It's been Bondi,
Go figure.
Bondi, Gnome, and Tulsi have been the last three dominoes. But why the fuck is Kash Patel still there? Like, like I thought for sure he was the next one up, but I was wrong about that.
And we're also getting reports, by the way, that JD Vance is thinking about not running. I mean, who knows if this is just some Rubio story or something, but like that he's thinking about foregoing the 2028
a
run. And I
smart
think
play.
part of that is because those figures, the quote unquote less hawkish administrative figures, are marginalized within the administration. They don't have a lot of power, and they see the writing on the wall. So I actually think it makes sense. Probably would have made sense for Tulsi Gabbard to leave earlier.
pondering. I'd like to hear a good Pisco Trump corruption rant. Any chance the courts killed this slush fund and IRS immunity?
I'm just having trouble finding in my head someone who would have standing other than a branch of Congress. Maybe someone who thinks that they deserve weaponization fund money and like doesn't receive it can sue on the basis that it's, but like then it's on the basis of like an injury that was done or something. So I'm trying to think of like a case or controversy which would give the litigant standing. If it does happen, I do think it's probably illegal and unconstitutional.
This slush fund is on life support right now. The Republicans canceled a vote on budget reconciliation to fund ICE and CBP over this fund that has nothing to do with that. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be around much longer. They are freaking out about it.
There was some reporting that there was a behind closed doors meeting with senators, and apparently like 20 senators were screaming at Blanche, the acting AG. I think you are going to see, I know it's difficult to imagine now because Donald Trump has had this iron grip, but once we get past these midterms, and especially if they lose the Senate as well, I do think you're going to see significant number of Republicans just publicly break from Trump. And
see,
it hasn't happened yet. I understand. It's just like, it's difficult to imagine, but he can't run for a third term, and he is a giant rotting albatross around the neck of the party. And so many of them will flee, many of them will stay, but yeah.
Oof, I disagree, but that's a story for another day, I guess. I think what you're seeing now is there's what they're calling the YOLO caucus. I think it's a cringe name. I think it's like scorned Republicans, Massey, Cassidy, Cornyn. They're starting now to express their anger through blocking some of Trump's agenda, but those guys won't be there in the next Congress, so who knows?
You don't think they'll
YOLO
flame?
caucus? Like they're just like like throw everything at the wall, or what do you mean?
You only live once, YOLO. I guess these guys who have been primaried by Trump or decided not to run again, like Tom Tillis in North Carolina, they're free to speak their mind, and they're kind of getting their revenge on Trump by holding up some of his stuff. And also, by the way, about as far as Tulsi goes, you know, Trump's going to have to get these new people confirmed, right? Like new attorney general, new DNI. He can have an acting person in those positions for like 270 days, and he can extend that if he wants, if they get rejected or whatever. But still, I mean, Trump's going to struggle to get his new cabinet picks confirmed with the haters now in the Senate.
Yeah, real quick, Daz Vidania says, trust no one from Connecticut to have a good bagel take. I like that. And this was a super that didn't get read from the Live and Learn, which, sorry about that, but says they were pushing back, ascribing malicious motives on McMorrow interview. It was good, but Hutch, you spent a week on the Nazi tat and fake doctor stuff. It's frustrating, but I think we kind of covered whether or not these things were equivalent criticisms. Sorry, we didn't read that one. What do you, what is this you linked? This is
just look at the aggregate, man. I mean, like New York Times Siena poll. I mean, they're a massive outlier to be clear, but there was a New York Times Siena poll from 2 days ago that had the general ballot at D+18. Okay.
So like, wow.
I don't know if it's true, but that would be crazy if it was true. If it's really D+18, then we are winning Iowa. We are winning Texas. We might win a governor.
No, guy, you don't get to talk, guy. You don't believe polls, so you don't get to point to this. You don't get to point to this.
I don't need these polls. I have special election results too, and I have fundraising to look at too.
So. Once that happens, if they really do get blown out in the midterms, then what would be the point of Republicans like sticking with Trump? Like, you know, you're going to see Cruz break away from Trump at some point because it's going to be so bad.
He is always going to be popular no matter what he does, Hutch. He's going to retain 90% plus popularity. That's never going to go away. And he is the leader of the Republican Party. He's the president of the United States. You cannot win going against him as a Republican.
In the same New York Times Siena poll, they asked Republican voters if the next nominee for president should be like Trump or do something new. And it was like 40% of the party said do something new. That's
I understand
a lot. You know, that's
party's
a lot.
dead, Hutch.
It's
already dead.
You can't go against him.
It is.
Just can't go against him though.
You can when he drops down into the fucking like 20s.
Look at Biden.
Of, like approval.
It was impossible. You couldn't go out there. Like Kamala could not shit on Biden. It just would not have gone over well.
Biden wasn't this unpopular.
He was pretty unpopular.
It's a cult. It's a cult, and it will remain a cult till the day he dies. That's my guys. I have to go soon. I have a debate at 9 on court packing. So if you want to see court packing debates, It'll happen in 8
Where-
minutes.
Who's
I'm
it
already
against?
know.
Who you fighting?
I have no idea. Someone just said core packing debate. I said yes, and it's I have no idea.
No idea. What if you walk in and it's Bernstein and Emma Vigland?
I'll be like, I don't
Are you
know if
prepared?
it's genocide. I guess so. Medicare for some. I don't know.
All right.
I'm playing.
Okay,
I'm playing.
well,
Let's- come on.
guys, check out Pisco's debate after this, after we wrap up. And anything else to shout out, Pisco?
Nothing. Let me think. Oh, another core packing debate this week with Ryan Mullally, who we colluded against in a dark corner of the internet, and we didn't want him to grow or anything. So that's why we didn't have him on before. But now we finally have organized the debate with Ryan Mullally on the very same issue. That'll be this week, the 28th, I believe. You can check my Twitter.
All right, thank you. Guy,
Also,
what's going on with you
sorry,
this week?
sorry.
Oh,
I
Pisco.
did one other thing. The Gilmore and Gondam show, I talked a lot about stuff there. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Talk about Democrats. Talk about Israel, Palestine. So that's on my collaboration, so you can watch it there.
Okay, right on. Guy, what do you got going on this week?
I don't have anything scheduled, but I did post a video on my YouTube, as Pisco mentioned, that Ken Martin should not resign. So if you want to go check it out there and let me know in the comments if you disagree with me, I'd love to hear from you. So I encourage people to check that out on my YouTube page.
All right, go watch this new vid. On my end, I got a WIC panel on the Hassan subpoena thing on Wednesday, and I'm trying to get my new Woke 2 video out this week, but it might be next week, guys, so keep an eye out on that. And Hutch, what's going on with you?
First of all, Vishy wants me to read a $2 donation. Progressive Victory is the loser left. I'm not going to read the rest of it.
Well, Vishy, if you want them not to be the losers left, you should donate more than Ben did to me. So
I am just feasting on just this most succulent drama slop for the last like week and a half. So probably do some more of that this week.
God.
Tomorrow I'm not gonna probably not gonna stream because got to take my kitty to the vet in the morning. So if I stream, it'll be
Aw.
late. But yeah.
Hope
Bet
it feels
stream.
better.
Okay, first of all, why is he calling his kid his kitty? That's really weird. And second of all, why is he taking him to a vet? That's what I want to know.
Big operation.
Can he not afford to take his own child to a doctor? And can he call his child something that is not anthropomorphizing him as a animal? Reverse anthropomorphizing, that is. Thank you.
yeah.
No, I'm not gonna do it. Might be bad news.
Shout out to the cat. I hope he's okay. Sorry to hear that.
She.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Catch you next week. Check all of these people out. Should we announce some sort of the project? No, next week. All right, next week. All right, cool. All right, we love you guys. Have a great week. Stay safe out there.
Bye.
Cool. Bye.
I want to see if I can find that Pisco debate. Let's see, what can we find here? Something to watch.
To deter future bad content.
Here we go.
Excellent. Well, this was a great way to start the show. Another great game of Straw Man, Steel Man. Thank you so much to our panel for participating, and good job to everybody for steel manning those straw man arguments. So before we launch fully into this open discussion about court expansion, James, I understand you've got a statement that you have written to set the table for this discussion. Would you kick us off with that, please, sir?
Sure. You know, before we do that, do you wanna tell everyone about the creator stocks that we've created?
Absolutely. You know what? We have been celebrating our guests with our fake stock market, with which we use our fake currency grift coin to sell these fake stocks. That is not what I wanted to show people from Discord, but that's okay. What I wanted to show people was the stocks board. We've got a list of creators who have been on the show, and some of them have maintained pretty strong positions on the stock board. Non-Fawn has survived several dumps of his stock from a couple of people. I wonder if he's coordinating things behind the scene. But with that said, we've got our new stocks here for all of our guests. We've got Kalinda, little cat emoji there. We've got Pisco. That's not really a Pisco sour. It's more of a martini, but it's the best we could do. And with Tom, we've got Full Coin representing Tom with Little Bald Man there. Anyway, so if you want to participate in the market, you can join our Discord server and get Grift coins. Spend it on the creators who impress you the most. We will have it open for call-ins later, so jump in the waiting room as the show goes on, and we might pull you in, and you might get even more Grift coin if you do a good job. But that is something we've got going on here at the marketplace. Just something, a fun way to keep track of who's leading the
Who's
space.
winning in the marketplace?
Who's winning the marketplace, exactly.
That's right.
So with that out of the way, James, if you could, please.
We'll get underway here. Alrighty. We'll get into it here. Our society is in political disarray. Both sides, starting with Republicans, have begun engaging in redistricting warfare, gerrymandering, a political drawing of lines that subverts the intended processes of democracy. Instead of the people choosing who will represent them, the representatives are designing voting districts to ensure their political team holds on to the power of the people. As we've already seen, when one side stops respecting the democratic process and forges ahead with only power as their guiding principle, it necessarily forces the hand of the other side to respond in kind. Democrats are understandably and, in my opinion, justified in responding by counter-gerrymandering. But where does this process end? In March 2016, Barack Hussein Obama nominated Merrick Garland to an opening in the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell, against all precedent and against the just democratic process, refused to allow a vote on his confirmation, effectively rigging one of the three branches of government in their favor. And we are now seeing the serious impact of these actions. In effect, the Republicans have total control over a critical pillar of our three branches of government, and with it are legislating from the bench to an arguably unprecedented level. So, how should the Democrats respond? If we choose to respond, even if it is morally justifiable, where does this chain of escalations end? And if we don't, are we not just choosing to lie down and take it in the buns? These questions and more will be answered once and for all, I'm certain, on the Marketplace of Ideas.
Well said, James. With that, let's get some opening statements. We made some allusions to your positions in the previous segment, but let's restate them for the good of this discussion. I'm going to ask for Pisco and Tom to go first, and then we'll ask some clarifying questions that some listeners, including myself, might have from your previous discussion last week. And then we'll get to Kalinda once we've gotten that established. All right, Pisco, if you could, please, sir.
Yes, so the case for court expansion for Democrats, there are many reasons why the court should be expanded. But there is a basic one that I think everyone should be able to agree with, and it's one that I've created a formally valid argument for, and that is on a neutral basis as a matter of self-defense. And this argument essentially goes that if it was the case that there was injurious partisan court packing, and there's no effective way to reverse it without court packing in response, and you're proposing reciprocal packing, which doesn't overshoot beyond mild deterrence, and there's no reason to expect, like I think a lot of people, Chicken Littles are saying, a severe consequence cascade where we're ending in civil war and the country's going away, then the injured party is justified in reciprocal expansion of the Supreme Court. And in point of fact, there was an initial injurious partisan Supreme Court packing. That was what happened with Mitch McConnell. There is no effective way to erase and to reverse that injury without doing a court packing. I'm not in favor of a 1,000-person reversal court pack. I'm in favor of a reciprocal court packing that doesn't overshoot beyond mild deterrence. So I think that that's totally reasonable. And there's no reason to expect a cascade of consequences like the one that's on offer, right? And so given that, we should make whole the injured party. Where is the evidence that if we were to increase the Supreme Court to, say, 13 seats, that all of a sudden no one would listen to Supreme Court orders anymore? Is there a single empirical example that the opposition can point to where that has happened? And if that's the case, why is it preferable? Why is it preferable to live with a permanently skewed injury? We're not talking about some injury that happened back in the day 1,000 years ago, 500. There are injured parties today The members on the Supreme Court that are on there only because of this injury continue to be there, giving ridiculous opinions and stuff. So all of that is a present injury. Why should we not make that whole? Why does this argument not follow? Of course it follows. And there's no basis under which to ideologically distinguish what Mitch McConnell did versus what we are proposing to do. In fact, what I say, and there's never been an effective counter to this, what legislative court packing is more virtuous than what Mitch McConnell did. Because what Mitch McConnell did was the decision of one person. Legislative court packing has the virtues of bicameralism. 2 houses of Congress both have to pass the same language to 2 branches of Congress, not just one person. Then it needs to go to the president, signed off by the president, and then it's subject to judicial review under the court's jurisdiction. So all of that is present and makes it more virtuous to do that in response versus what Mitch McConnell did. The argument goes through. The argument is valid. Which of the premises do you disagree with?
Excellent. Now, before we move on, there was one thing that came up last week, and I think there might be some confusion about the use of the word justification. I think the more colloquial meaning of that word justified is something maybe could be argued to be a legitimate response, while not there's this idea of something being justified maybe not being the optimal choice. But it sounds like you prefer to use the word justified more, and maybe it's more of a legal definition of the word.
No.
It's justified. Okay.
Not legally justified, because no one is going to be able, I think, to argue that they wouldn't have the legal authority to expand the court. So we're not arguing about legal authority. What we're arguing is whether it's ethically, morally justified. That's what we're talking about, is whether it's smart, good to do this.
Yeah, I think that there might be some agreement on the panel. We'll get everybody else's feedback on that in a second. But there's this idea that something might be morally or ethically justified, but it's not the tactically optimal choice. I think that I think maybe Connor was trying to make that point last week. What do you think about that? Do you think that this is an optimal tactical choice?
I just take optimal to be with reference to some goal, right? And I don't know that I make the argument that this is, among all the options that you could do, the one that perfectly maximizes utility or perfectly maximizes outcomes. And so I'm not making that strong of a commitment, but I do think it's better than other alternatives presented, and it's certainly better than the status quo. And that's by the metric by which I say it's good. It's something we ought to do, unless there's a better path. And if there's a better path, I would do that, right? So I want to do the thing that is the best. And so on my eye, this is at least the best proposal that's been offered, is to do some amount of expansion. Maybe there's a better one, but if there is, that we could do in lieu of it, and not as additive, right? There are other things you could do in conjunction with it, but that replaces this, then I would be in support of it, but I just haven't heard it.
Awesome. Okay, and then the other question I had, there's some talk about what happens if we will expand the courts as far as the speculations on different consequences. What do you think would happen if we don't expand the courts? What do you think would be the consequences of failing to act in that way?
Failing to act would promote an injury that was done and would not relieve an injury that could be relieved at the moment. So you're promoting a previous wrong, and you're not letting that be healed, in other words. In addition, obviously, the consequences to a Democratic agenda would be obvious. I mean, the Supreme Court's going to strike down things that President Gavin Newsom, et cetera, are going to do. I think that it will lead to more bad results that the public sees from the courts. And so their faith in the Supreme Court is going to go down if we allow this injury to persist, because the Supreme Court has not been doing very popular things. And then ultimately, I think the consequence of not doing so, we're going to continue to have this inconsistent precedent, these many different norm violations by the Supreme Court itself. And so there's a lot of benefit to expanding the court, including not just repairing the injury, but consequences overall, politically, and in terms of institutional and credibility concerns.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for your opening statement, Pisco. I'd like now to move on to Tom. Tom, if you could give us your position.
Yeah, my position is that this is not the optimal way to do it. I don't think that it's necessarily immoral, illegal, wrong. I do think that we have the defensive justification after all of the things that the Republicans have done. I do think that it makes sense that there is going to be some sort of return fire from Democrats. But I want to gain the majority in the House and the Senate and be able to fight back against the Trump administration and the Republicans currently. Not just for partisan reasons. Partisan reasons are obviously part of it. I want Democrats to be able to put in place Democrat agendas. But I want to gain the majority because I believe in our institutions and our Constitution. And if our goals are not to reform the issues that are currently in place and fix our institutions, fix the problems that there currently are, I don't know what we're doing then. Like, if it's all just partisan fighting to where we're trying to gain the majority and then be able to put 2 more seats in the Supreme Court to where we would win a lot more cases, it seems like a very partisan agenda to me that seems to continue to decay the Supreme Court. I mean, he said that a minute ago, Pisco was saying that like the states have never had a problem with this after packing the courts, but I don't think that there's been like a back and forth between Democrat and Republican majorities where we would even have the ability to do something like that. And then he also said that, like, where's the argument come from that nobody would listen to the Supreme Court? I don't know. Like, there's not really a possibility that people would just not listen unless they're like the president. Everybody else would have some sort of legal consequences for not listening to the Supreme Court. So I don't know that that's even much of an argument. But when we're talking about putting in place 2 Supreme Court justices, yet there is 1 injury of 1 justice, this doesn't sound like it's just trying to fix an injury, but it is instead for very partisan reasons that continues to decay our institutions instead of fixing them.
Okay, and you kind of alluded to this, but there was one question that came up in the last debate where you seem to not be entirely committed as to whether or not you would support expanding the court in order to change the court's demographic layout from a 6-3 majority conservative to a 6-5 majority conservative. Now that you've had some time to ponder it, you're not on the spot. Where do you think you stand on that particular issue?
Yeah, no, I made pretty clear, like, on the panel that I was against that, and that I did think that, yeah, expanding the court was probably not the move, but instead putting in place, like, different regulations that would possibly fix the issues that we have now, and even putting in place term limits that would make it to where we wouldn't have as long of an issue as maybe we might be worried about right now.
Okay, and there was also, you did mention that you might support unpacking the court to some degree. What motivates your support for that? Where does that come from?
I do think that Mitch McConnell approving the Supreme Court justices under Trump and not under Biden, obviously he has the right to do so, but I do think that our institutions are so they rely so much on the norms that the norms might as well be hard rules. And if you're not following these and you're breaking the norms for unjustified reasons that you're not even going to follow long term, like the 6-month, end of term sort of deal, I do think that it makes sense to possibly pull somebody out. But on top of that, like the Constitution, when it talks about having Supreme Court justices in their seats, it talks about as long as they're on good behavior, and I think that there's some justification for these people not being not engaging in good behavior, not engaging in good behavior while having their seats.
Excellent. So to restate, you agree with Pisco that there is justification. That's not where your qualm is.
Or
For packing the courts. Sorry.
Well, in some senses of the word and not others. We tried to unpack it, but there it is again.
Yeah, no, but in what sense what does justification mean other than things that we ought to do or things that would be good? I mean, like, in what sense is justification not indexed to those things?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this just to say that it's not an illegitimate concern to want to mitigate these harms. Right, we're sidestepping that part of the. There was some time spent on that conversation, and now in our attempt to sidestep it, we are talking about it more than I intended to. I was hoping we would just zoom past it, but it sounds like there is consensus between the two of you in regards to there has been harm done. Something needs to be done about it. The disagreement is
what to be done.
This the best choice for
on that view, if what you mean is was it a legitimate harm? Is it one that we should care about? Then I think both of us agree that the harm done by the Mitch McConnell thing was something we should care about.
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. All right. Well, Kalinda, thank you so much for waiting patiently. If you could give us your position on this matter.
Okay, I'm gonna go further than Tom did, because that unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say this, but as much as it was shitty that Mitch McConnell did that, it was not illegal. The Constitution does in fact allow him to do that, and I don't really think that and also he and the Republicans had been elected and they had won that majority in the Senate. And so arguably they were doing what their constituents wanted them to do because, elections have consequences and shit. I also don't understand why you want to, like what Tom said, I don't understand why you want to add multiple justices to the Supreme Court when there was only one seat that was quote unquote stolen. I also do not agree with this weird changing of definitions. No, what McConnell did was not packing. It was like, you could call it something else, like court capture or whatever. That's not the same thing. And it feels like the only reason why we want to call all these things court packing is so that we then can be like, well, they did it first, so now it's our turn to do it. And all of this ultimately seems to boil down
that's
to,
how you feel?
it's not
Great.
bad when we do it. Which is essentially, it seems like that is constantly the whole thing, that this is all just about partisanship. And at the end of the day, it ultimately boils down to, we're mad because the Supreme Court
partisanship is part of it.
now. And by the way, I'm also mad. I'm a
that
liberal.
for
I don't like it
Democrat.
either. But I mean, Hillary Clinton lost the election, so I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. There are certain things that we probably should have done, or rather, I guess you guys probably should have done. Because I'm not American, but like for example, enshrining Roe versus Wade at the federal level, that nobody did because everybody just took that shit for granted. But yeah, I don't really, it just seems kind of silly. We can't just redefine words and then say these things. Also, Pisco, I want to ask you a hypothetical question, okay? Let's pretend that the Garland thing never happened and Merrick Garland was appointed to the Supreme Court, all right? But Donald Trump still got his, I guess, how many appointments did he get during his first term?
3 total.
I believe he got 2. Yeah. After.
Okay, well, let's say he just got 2 instead, okay? And then let's say in his second term, so like in the upcoming midterms, the Democrats win control of the House or of the Senate, okay? And Sonia Sotomayor dies. Oh, you're gonna say it wouldn't be justified,
Correct.
even though Donald Trump is like a corrupt piece of shit, no matter which no matter what no matter, like, even if he picked like an absolute insane sycophantic toady.
Well, we can talk about that. So,
like, thought the 2020 election was stolen.
So,
and anyone he nominates, by the way, would think that.
Yeah. So I'm not against voting down disqualified nominees. That's something different. But that'll open us up into the conversation about what happened to Merrick Garland, what was a norm violation, and what I would be okay with in response. But if your answer is all else equal, would you be okay with doing a court packing, even in the absence of an initial, court packing? We can get into that. Violation by Mitch McConnell. We can get into that, but assuming that there was no such thing, I would say no, not justified. I'm consistent on that. It's a neutral self-defense principle, and I've laid out a valid argument, and I want to engage it in some of the things that you said, if we're open to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay,
excellent.
that's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I feel like I think there are other people who would absolutely argue and say that it was justified, that Democrats should do everything they can to stop.
Yeah, you're not talking to them. You're talking to me.
Basically completely ham-fist Donald Trump's agenda. And, I'm not even sure that I would even necessarily be 100% against that, because I don't consider that to be court packing, and that is within Congress's power to do.
So let's do that first. So the first thing you said was it's different. What Mitch McConnell did is different, is because what Mitch McConnell did was a consequence of an election. It was within his authority to do that. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, it was a norm violation, but it was not illegal.
Okay. So you said it's not illegal. Would it be illegal? Yes, sir. Wait. Let me respond. So no. Would it be illegal for Congress to expand the number of seats on the Supreme Court?
No, it wouldn't. But that's not the reason why I'm against it. I'm against it because
then we have to put that to the side, right? So when you said, well, Mitch McConnell had the authority to do that, if it's not relevant because there's no disparity there, then it's not relevant for you to bring up. So let's put to the side everything having to do with the legality of Mitch McConnell overseeing the Senate's affairs.
That's fine. We don't have to talk about the legality of it.
Although, because it's irrelevant, right? Because both are legal. It's irrelevant. It's literally irrelevant.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I don't.
Okay, so the other distinction is like a semantic one.
Although I do think, I do think that there are other things that could matter here. Like do you not? I guess, like, listen, I don't agree with this. I think that this is stupid. But if you look at it from the Republican perspective, would you not consider the fact that, like, for a long time now, they thought everything that that the liberal Supreme Court was doing, even though the Supreme Court was like, you know, not
What is
really
this, like a
liberal at all. Yeah.
Wannabe?
they considered it to be like legislating from the
This is
bench,
like
basically from Roe
the
versus
Human
Wade on.
Centipede and like
Instead-
Yeah,
Destiny.
and-
you're
is
asking
the,
if
where
I
they
take
would,
their
like,
perspective,
make-
then
the Human Centipede. Destiny is the first one. Hutch is the second one. And this chick right here is the third one. So Hutch is actually in the middle. Which the middle is worse because you have someone constantly sewed on your ass. But you're also getting food that's only been digested by one person and not by two people. So that's a pretty big benefit.
what? Yeah, so I understand what their perspective is. I think it's an unhinged perspective.
Yeah,
You're
that's
asking,
that.
assuming
yeah,
their
that,
perspective,
Wait, you.
it's an unhinged perspective. I don't agree with it, but you're saying take on board their perspective. Now, what's your question?
To be honest with you, I don't know if I consider that to be entirely unhinged. But wait, you're one of those people. You think Roe versus Wade was like legally sound, don't you?
Yeah, correctly
Are you
decided.
one
Yeah.
of those people who think
Yeah.
that?
Are you in a position to say that
Okay.
it wasn't?
Listen, I did not like. I don't think that it was, or it didn't seem like it was.
In
Because
virtue of
they
what is
were,
it
like,
not?
They basically kind of. No, because they invented.
They made it
like,
about
the
a privacy issue.
So
Yeah,
okay,
they made
but
it
that's
a
that's
privacy
the
issue when it wasn't.
so you
But
guys.
no, listen. Here's my actual I don't think Roe versus Wade was bad when they did it, but I think that it is terrible that they did not fucking like that. At no point did anybody think, hey, maybe we should codify this as law. And the only reason why gay marriage got codified as law at the federal level was because Roe versus Wade got overturned. And then
These
suddenly
are
they
just
were like,
tangents
oh,
that
shit,
aren't
we can't
relevant
stop
to the
taking
issue. Okay,
these
you're
things.
asking me to onboard the
As-
Republican position as though it were reasonable. I don't agree that it's reasonable. If you want to fight me that it is, we can have the conversation about whether Republicans' perspective that the conservative judiciary that we've had ever since, the 70s, by the way, the big era where there was like a more liberal majority court was post New Deal. This was, not at all the court we've had for the last like 50, 60, 70 years. And the court has gotten way, way, way more conservative over the years. I don't think the position is reasonable that this has been a liberal run amok court. And I think it's an unhinged position to believe that. But you're asking me to onboard it as an assumption and then to ask a question. What is that question?
I mean, the question is that if you were like a Republican voter or you were someone who was living in Kentucky and in Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's constituency, do you not think maybe that people might feel that way? Or like, actually, you know what? No, let's back up.
I grant they feel that way. I grant they feel that way. I grant Republicans feel the way they feel. I grant that Trump
No.
people feel it the way they feel. What
Okay.
does that have to do with the argument?
Do you let me back up and ask you this question. Do you think that it's a good idea for like basically the Supreme Court to do things like decide, for example, that gay marriage is legal in the United States or that abortion should be legal throughout the entirety of the United States rather than this being done through legislation?
It
Because
depends
it
on-
seems like some of these
It depends
things
on the
are
ruling. I mean,
flimsy.
you're assuming that it's flimsy, but you're not really in a position to say that Obergefell was wrongly decided, are you? Are you ready to lay that
No,
out?
I don't think. No, I don't think Obergefell was wrongly decided, but I'm saying that I don't think it's a good idea to have these decisions be made by the Supreme Court when that can then be undone by a
Even if
future
it was
Supreme
rightly
Court
decided.
ruling.
So it's not a. So I just want to make sure I get it clear. Even if it was correctly decided, you wouldn't be in favor of the Supreme Court deciding it. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, why would you? So because you're asking the court to basically legislate shit from the bench, which is kind of
Not
like
if
what
it was
that's
rightly
doing.
decided.
If, you're saying,
If it's rightly decided, it's not like doing anything improper. Then it's just interpreting the Constitution the way it should be. If you're not in a position to dispute whether Obergefell was rightly decided, I don't really think it's fair for you to invoke it as an example of the court legislating from
This
the bench.
is so silly. Why why is Destiny 1v1ing this person? This is not. I mean, it's cathartic prog slop, but come on. What is going on here? I feel like they have to bang after this.
I wasn't talking about Obergefell. I think that there's a better.
You literally
argument
were.
for,
You're saying
like,
it's not good for them to decide the gay
abortion.
marriage issue from the court, and I'm like, why? Unless, if
Yeah,
you-
that's one of the things. Like, I'm sorry. Listen. Maybe I just find more merits in originalism than you do. Like, for example, I think that it is insane that
you
your
don't know
constitution does not
anything
have a
about the
fucking
cases
equal
you're
rights
talking
amendment for
about.
protected classes, and so instead you have to do dumb shit like use the fucking interstate commerce clause to say that people can't like discriminate
Doesn't
against
the
whether or not
interstate commerce
like
clause grant
non-white people can
Congress
come into their
broad
shops.
deference?
Yeah, so we
Like,
have.
I think that's kind of ridiculous.
I don't know
It's
like
so
where you're getting this
regulatory
information
matters.
from.
It should be overturned.
There's an equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment, and there has been legislation done with respect to
Yeah,
equal
that's
access
equal
and equal.
under the law, though. That's not the same.
And we
thing
do
as,
have, and we do
like,
have legislative.
private businesses.
Understood, and we do have private limitations on discrimination in the form of
Public
Title VII
Yeah.
and other legislative regimes. I don't know why it has
Yeah, but
anything
how
to
is
do
that
with what we're talking about here. It's enforced through
That's
lawsuits.
enforced by the Interstate Commerce Clause.
No, that's the no. Sorry. That's the source.
That's how the federal government has that power. And
That's
I
a
think
source
that's
of legislative.
Stupid.
So, how something is enforced is different than where the source of legislative authority comes from. And I'm sorry, the Interstate Commerce Clause, it does do a lot of heavy lifting. It does do a lot of heavy lifting, and you
Okay, what law school did you go to, Buster?
could say that that's like wrongly interpreted, and you can take that view of the Interstate Commerce Clause
I
or whatever.
don't think it's wrongly interpreted, but here's my fear. My fear is that in the future, some sort of case.
Like, here's the thing. This woman needs a lawyer by her side. And it should be a 2v2. You know what I'm saying? Tomfoolery, even though he has a very, very good first name, is not a lawyer. And so he's ill-equipped to be the 2v2 partner here. I'm just saying.
Might come before the Supreme Court where they decide that no, the Interstate Commerce Clause is actually being interpreted way too fucking broadly, and we don't want that to be the case anymore.
I listened to a podcast.
Hold on, this is going a little bit.
this-
Wait, hold on, wait.
That
Hold
was
on, wait.
very
This is
in-depth.
going like a little bit down the line because is your concern that are you saying that Roe v. Wade should have been decided based on equal protections instead of based on privacy?
No, I think that there should have been like a law passed at some point after Roe v. Wade was done.
Great, so
mean,
do
yeah,
I.
you
I don't know
could
what that has
say-
to do with anything. I grant that. Yeah, they should have had a law. So, how does that advance this
And the
argument
only
about
reason
expansion?
why I'm saying about the Roe versus Wade thing, like the only reason why I'm saying I was okay with it is more of a where I'm willing to put aside whether it was wrongly decided or not is more of a pragmatic thing, because I don't think that at the point where that happened that there was like legislative power to be able to pass a law that made that the federal law of the land.
Okay, but what does that have to do
Well,
with
I
what we're
do-
here
I
to
wanna take
decide?
this
We're
back
here
real
to
quick because
resolve whether we should expand the Supreme Court. And I don't understand. Okay. Even take on board that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. Even if you granted that, this would still follow. In my view.
Can we get?
Well, hold on.
Tom,
I
you were
want
trying
to
to
take
say
this back real quick. Yeah, I want to take this back real quick because I do disagree that like what Mitch McConnell did wasn't illegal. The Constitution for the like appointments clauses and like nominations and confirmation processes does outline like what it is that you're supposed to be taking into account when there is a nomination and whether or not you do accept this nomination or confirm the nomination. And they didn't go through any of that. They made up their own rule on the spot that they couldn't nominate or accept a nomination or
A
confirm
range
a
of
nomination within
matters
the last 6
are
months.
potentially relevant when the Senate considers whether to give its consent for nomination to the nation's highest court, including political considerations, the nominee's judicial philosophy, fitness for the bench, past statements on issues relevant
What
to
are
the
you
court,
reading from?
and overall. This is Constitution annotated.
Okay, what does it matter?
There's
Okay,
like
so
got
what does
a
it
whole
matter?
page here, and it's also got the
if what
article
Tom
from
is saying is true, if it were the case that this was illegal for Mitch McConnell to not give hearings, I'm not saying that. I think it's probably legal within his authority to determine whether or not hearings should be had. But even assuming it's not, Tom, that's worse for your argument. Then you have an illegal norm violation versus a legal norm violation. And so I just don't understand why.
Well, that's that's why I've said that I'm perfectly fine without with remedying the suit that was taken.
So let's
I'm
ask
totally
Kalinda.
with
So-
removing
yeah,
that
it's
person. And you
one
guys, just to be clear, for like for people, what I'm arguing for is in a lot of people's eyes considered court packing. What I'm against is the adding of 2 seats, but what I'm in favor of is technically colloquially considered court packing.
So I don't want to get into like a semantic argument about I take court packing to be a form of irregular adding and manipulating of the partisan composition of a court. That's the what I take court packing to be. Now you could say, oh, that's not really court packing. Then whatever Mitch McConnell did was worse. You can call it something else, but it's worse than legislative court packing. For me, the semantic issue, put that to the side. It's not going to help you here because what Mitch McConnell did was worse than legislative court packing.
Okay, then why do you want? How many justices did you say you wanted to bump it up to?
Wait a second.
13?
Why don't you respond to that, right? Do you take the view, or do you not take the view that what Mitch McConnell did was worse than a proposed Democratic? Let's add a 1-seat expansion to the Supreme Court.
I think that if it was 1 seat, if you were going to expand it by 1 seat, then yes, I would say that norm violation is worse. But that's not what you're talking about. You don't want to just give 1 seat. In fact, if you just wanted to give 1 seat, I don't even necessarily disagree with you because it's only one seat.
So let's pause right there.
My concern.
So let's pause right there. So you would agree, at a bare minimum, you're in favor of court expansion by 1.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but like that's not my concern though. My concern is the fact that if you want to bump it up to 13 justices, then all you are doing is you want to partisanly add justices to the court so that you can undo issues because you're mad that there is, because it's a conservative court now, and you know what's going to happen, and I'm sorry, but you're not going to convince me otherwise of this, because like Tom said, in those other states, the Democrats haven't had a chance to do it back. All you're doing is you're pressing the nuclear button, and as soon as the Republicans get in power, they're going to press the button and launch.
Well, that's just a claim, but let's take it. So that's a claim on the consequences. But it sounds like we have agreement, at least between Kalinda and I, that it would be justified, by which we mean good, for Democrats to at least expand the court by 1 member. Is that right, Kalinda?
If we take the view that McConnell stole that seat, I mean, I don't know if I'm fully 100%.
That's what I want to get ground on. If you give,
I think that what he did was like really bad because it was outside of the norms. And
was it or was it not worse than a 1-person legislative court pack? Was it or was it not worse than a 1-person court pack?
Honestly, I think that they're probably both on the same level, and that's why I think that if you wanted to add 1 person to the Supreme Court in order to redress that justice, I'd be okay with that.
Okay, so then
that's
definitionally
adding way more than that.
Okay, but we agree with, so we're getting common ground. This is why it's important, and I appreciate that. You and I agree that at a bare minimum, court expansion is justified if it's just 1. Now we can talk about more, but I want to get Tom here.
Yeah, because that's the number.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Tom, can you reflect on that? Was a 1-seat expansion of the court in response to what McConnell did? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that adding 1 is again justified, but I wouldn't be happy with the outcomes of this. I don't want 10 Supreme Court justices where there's tied decisions in the the oldest or the tie breakers would be conservatives anyway, so where there wouldn't be much of a difference.
So you think it's justified, by which you mean what?
What?
You think a 1-person court a legislative court pack is justified, by which you mean what, other than we should do it? If it's justified, what does that mean if it doesn't mean it's good to do?
Meaning that I think, so if somebody holding a baby shoots at me, I have the right to shoot back at them, but I don't want to hit the baby. It might be a bad idea, and I might be able to find other ways of doing this that would be better without me killing a baby in the meantime.
Right, so what are the other ways of remedying that injury other than a court pack? I have some ideas, by the way.
I've already named numerous.
How about we aggressively pursue? How about we aggressively pursue like impeachments and like ethics code shit? Because like we all know we can all be like pretty certain with pretty high levels of certainty that fucking Alito and Thomas are corrupt as fuck. Or is at least Thomas? It wasn't he the guy who was taking the bribes and going on the crazy yachts with the billionaires and shit?
First of all, I think that starting to impeach justices is what's up, Tom?
Well, I said that I do think that like impeachment of 1 and then replacing them with our pick would be justified. I think that adding term limits for Supreme Court justices to where the The oldest
would-
ones would be out faster. I
that would
think
require
that
an
denying
amendment
their
of
Supreme
to the
Court justices in
Constitution.
the future, regardless of whether it's in the last 6 months or not, would be justified. Like, there's a lot of things that I think would not only be justified, but even better, to where there wouldn't be an oscillation of back and forth partisan Supreme Court packing.
So let's take first this notion of impeachment. Actually, first let's get the numbers right, okay? The norm violation resulted in a net gain of 2 for the Republicans. This is just math, okay? This was a Democratic nominee, should have been appointed, or at least should have been considered, and you get a Republican in there. That's -1 + 1. That's 2, okay? So that's 2 for Republicans, all right? -1 for Democrats, which is net +1, and then another Republican added there, so that's +2. That's on the numbers. And then, what do you mean?
I don't
What do you object to that?
What? No, Trump.
Well, when the
got
norm is already
2
that it's been at 9, it's been at 9 for a long time.
No,
the last
hold
time
on.
the Democrats talked about Supreme Court packing was like during Roosevelt. And even then, they had like a majority in the House and the Senate. They could have.
What are you talking about, Tom?
didn't
What the
do it.
fuck are
They
you talking
didn't
about?
because
How is that
they were
addressing
given
anything
that
I'm saying?
idea.
What are you saying right now? FDR period. What does that have to do with anything? I'm talking
That-
about math, all right?
that they-
This
that
was
the
a
number has
Democratic
been at
nominee.
9. What do you mean? What do you mean?
We're
do
talking
you not
about-
know what the number's been
So
at
you
9?
don't
That's
understand
been
what's
the
going
norm
on.
for a
So
long
Mitch
time. And that
McConnell-
they denied this under Roosevelt for the same exact reason, because they wanted to keep the number at 9.
We're not
All right, I
talking
think I
about
can
the
unpack this
denominator
a
to the
little
total number of justices. I'm telling you that in terms of how you're calculating the harm done by Mitch McConnell's court packing when he did his non-giving hearings to Merrick Garland and to Obama, that resulted in a -2 net effect on the partisan skew of the court. All right? Do you agree with that, or do you not agree with that?
It's
That huge
unintuitive,
kind of
but
partisan
that's
skew, yes, of
how the
course.
game theory works out.
You're
because
doing a math version, though, where you're saying you would add 2 seats. That's the part that we're disagreeing with, that it would no longer be 9. It would now be 11.
Hey, so just stay with me, all right? We're just talking about the effect on in terms of partisan balance of the court with 9, okay? So the net effect of what was done with Mitch McConnell was a 2 justice swing relative to a 9 Supreme Court justice, right?
Why was it? Hold on.
Why is this
I
so
don't
hard to give
understand. Why
ground,
was it-
guys? This is math.
No, it's not. No, but it doesn't.
it's
that
worse
doesn't
than
make
math.
sense.
It's logic, okay, Pisco. It's
It's
not
what-
entirely
we're talking
intuitive.
about-
You know, you see
it's-
one
no, no, no.
seat.
No,
It's not.
wait.
Hold on. I
Tom,
understand
shut
what
up
he's
for a
saying, but we're
second. I
talking
don't
about
under-
seats. Hold on. We're talking. No. We're talking about seats. That's the difference. Is that when we say, hey, we would remove them and replace them with one person, we're not considering that 2 seats now. This is 1 seat that we are replacing. You're talking about 2 things that you're adding because you find the number to be 2, whereas we're saying, well, if we want to keep it at 9, this is just 1 seat that has been where there is an injury on 1 seat. We would remedy this 1 injury for this 1 seat.
Think about it this way, Tom. If you had an election that was coming down to like an equal vote, and they stole your vote and then put in their vote, that is a 2-vote swing. It doesn't feel that way because we're only looking at this one open court seat, but that mathematically the game theory of it works out such that it is a
I
-1
understand the
and a
logic of it.
+1.
I'm
You sure?
disagreeing with that it's relevant. I'm disagreeing
How is
that
it not
matters.
relevant?
That's what
the overall harm is
I just
calculated in the
explained it by
Let
going
me
through
explain it.
Roosevelt,
Tom,
and
Tom,
you started saying
Tom,
that it didn't
listen,
apply.
listen
so.
to my words. It doesn't apply. Just forget about everything you just said. The harm done to the Democratic Party is in terms of the effect on the partisan nature, the partisan swing and composition of the Supreme Court. And that harm is not just the effect of removing 1 Republican justice. It's the effect of removing 1 Democratic justice and adding a Republican in its stead. You understand that?
But that doesn't.
Okay, that's the harm.
Okay, That is.
I said I understand it. I've said over and over, I understand what you're saying.
How can you say it's
it doesn't
not
apply
relevant?
to the actual prescription at hand, because if we're talking about keeping 9 seats, we're only talking about the seats that have
why are
been
you begging the
injured.
question?
That's it. That's what we're talking about. So if we
It's
can
your assumption that
remedy
we would.
this one
I'm in
seat,
favor of
that's
court
it.
expansion. Why would your? It's not relevant because we're only talking
Yeah,
about 9
okay.
seats. That's exactly what we're not only talking about? We're debating court expansion. So why would we onboard an assumption that we're only talking about 9 seats? Makes no sense. Makes no sense what you just said, Tom.
Because it does, because
Why
that's
do you
what we're
wanna-
saying is that we disagree with you on expanding the fucking court. That's what we're saying is that we're talking about 9 fucking
Yeah, but
seats.
you
You're
used it as
talking
part of
about
your argument.
a possibility of more seats. And we're saying we're not talking about a possibility of more seats. We're talking about the 9 seats that are at hand. That's what we want to keep.
So we're
and
not
we
here to
want
debate court
remedy this
expansion.
before
Are we
that.
here to debate court expansion or not?
We are.
Okay, so
We
then why
are,
are
but
we're
we're
only talking
disagreeing
about
with
9 seats?
you.
No, we're not. We're not only talking about 9 seats, Tom. You fucking idiot.
We, as in me and her. We as in me and her. I don't know why I have to break everything down for you like a fucking child, dude.
Tom,
her
Tom,
and I,
Tom,
we
really,
are talking
really
about
clear.
9
Tom,
seats. Do you understand that?
Tom,
Do
it's
you understand
really,
that?
it's
Yes or
Tom,
no?
it's
Yes
really.
or no, Pisco? Do you understand
Okay,
that? When
can I-
You're wrong.
we
You're wrong.
are talking about 9
So let's
seats?
just
Yes or no?
guys.
Yes or no?
Just
Do you
All right,
understand that?
stop.
I'm
Jesus
not wrong. She
fucking
wants to keep it at
Christ.
9.
We're off the
I'm
rails
not wrong.
here.
She
Wait
wants
a minute.
That's
I
her
don't actually wanna-
conclusion.
just a
That's
second.
her.
Does tomfoolery know that he just got caught begging the question and that's why he's spurging out? I think that's what's happening. And Pisco didn't say begging the question, so he can't say, oh, that's a bullshit lawyer language thing. And that's why tomfoolery doesn't know what to do. Normally he would just say, oh, begging the question, what did you memorize a fallacy? It's not what happened here. So he just spurged out instead.
Gang.
I don't want
Gang.
to keep it at 9 permanently. However, I don't think right now would be the time to listen. Okay, here is my proposal.
Oh, yeah,
And I
sure.
don't even know when exactly one might
Okay.
do this. All right, but you know what? You know what you could do if you actually wanted to expand the Supreme Court and not look like you're being a fucking partisan hack who's just mad that it currently has a conservative majority.
Great argument, by the way.
If you
But why are my intentions relevant
Took me
here?
2 hours.
Why don't you address the argument instead of being like, hey, you're just a
because
bad
it is
person? Address the
I'm
argument.
not
Hang on.
Jesus Christ! I
Hang
didn't
on.
say you were a bad person.
No,
I'm
like
just saying
my
that, like,
motivation. If you don't want to seem this way, that's not part of the argument. The question is, what is justified?
Okay, here's my
Put me out of
question,
it.
Pisco. Would you be mad if the shoe was on the other foot and it was
Whether-
the fucking Republicans that were trying to do this because there was like a really liberal Supreme
Answer
Court and they were
no.
super
Answer
mad about
no.
it?
Answer no. I mean, you can try to say that because you're a hypocrite, your argument is bad, but I'll bite the bullet and say,
Well,
if
yeah,
it's,
I
so
am.
why
I
don't
do
you
think
look
that it's
at the
bad. I
argument?
think
So
it's
why don't
bad
you
because
look?
it's
Why
not
don't
bad
you
when
look?
we
But I
do
bite the
it,
bullet.
shit.
So my argument is a neutral argument. At this point, I want to present the argument and want to get them to disagree with one of the premises, okay? Because this is totally off the rails. James, I sent you the formal argument. This is an argument in premise, conclusion form, and it's a logically valid argument.
Yeah,
and
I know,
want you to
I
reject
looked
one of
at
the.
it.
Yeah, and I want you to so you agree that it's a valid argument, and if the premises are true, the conclusion follows. And now I'm going to ask you to reject one of the premises because this is totally off the rails, and it's a neutral argument. So if the answer would be,
No, I
if the
would-
injured party were the Republican Party, I would be in favor of their taking action to remedy that injury. You can say I don't believe you or whatever, but I mean, okay, you can
No,
just say
no,
that.
no. There wouldn't be. I'm not talking about or any injury or whatever. I'm saying, let's say the Republicans started talking about packing the Supreme Court like FDR did in the 1930s because there was a bunch of liberals on there and they were mad that all their shit kept getting struck down. And they talked about packing the court. I'm sure you would be
That's
against
not
that.
what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about an FDR situation for which there is no
Yeah, but you're not
self-defense
talking
rationale.
about. You're talking about expanding it to 13 justices.
Yeah, I think it's justified.
which
So,
is
so
not
James, I'm asking you, please,
regressing.
now at this point, this conversation has devolved. I want to get at them to reject one of the premises. It's a formally valid argument. Let's get it on the board. Let's get everyone so they can see it. I'm going to ask you which of the premises you disagree with.
Here, I can pull it up on my screen and I can
Please.
minimize my face so that you can see the argument without seeing as much of me.
Okay.
So let me get that up for everybody. While we have a lull in the conversation, I'm getting that done. You're listening to the Marketplace of Ideas. We've got Pisco, Tomfoolery, and Kalinda here. If you're enjoying the conversation, please like the stream, maybe subscribe to our channels. We've also got YouTube channels for our guests. Please hit up their channels, give them likes and subscribes as well so we can all stand out in the algo. And let's see, where's that? James, could you shoot me that link, or where do we have that?
I sent it to James. It's a tweet. And here, it's really important for us to just like realize what we're not talking about. We're not talking about whether Pisco's a hypocrite. We're not talking about whether you know some other solution potentially would be better, unless it's fitting within the formal strictures of the argument. And that's like, I just want that to be clear here. That you're gonna have to reject one of the premises in order not to follow the conclusion.
I think we're touching on a lot of important things. I think I think everybody's frustrated because they realize how much is riding on all of this. And I think we slow down a little, give each other a little bit more space to make those arguments, even if it's not driving at the part of it that we each think is most critical at each moment. I think there are a lot of good intuitions here amongst the different speakers that
Okay,
have
can I-
value in this conversation, even if they're not perfectly logical at any moment or perfectly related to the arguments we're trying to have. I think there are important things that we should be digging into here. And I understand why it's frustrating for everybody. I really do, guys.
right.
But
Okay, I understand. Can I? Because like, yeah, I reject like multiple of these premises.
Which one?
Or do you want? Or do okay? Well, first of all, and I know you don't care about this, so please don't interrupt me when I say this. But obviously, I reject like the framing of like what McConnell did as court
Oh my
packing. And I would
God.
rather
The
call
question
it, like,
was, which
court
premise do you
capture
disagree
or something
with?
else, because that packing is adding seats. It's not like playing partisan
You
games
agree
and
it's
fucking around in
worse.
order to secure control of the Supreme Court.
So that's I take that to be a
but-
semantic. I can just tell you what I
first
mean
of
by
all,
court packing.
yeah, that's okay.
I can just tell you what I mean by
I
court
understand
packing.
what you mean. I don't care. Can I please finish? I understand what you mean. I know what you're saying. You have a more expansive definition of it than I do. I don't want to get bogged down in that. Okay? I do not
I don't think his definition is more
First of all,
expansive.
the proposed reciprocal packing doesn't overshoot beyond mild deterrence. I don't necessarily agree with that. You want to
Do you agree with it or
you wanna
not?
bump it up to 13 justices. No, I don't agree with that. You're trying to bump it up to 13 fucking
Yeah, I don't-
justices. You don't want to just
So-
add like
So I think that doesn't overshoot beyond mild deterrence. I mean, that's still maintaining the Supreme Court with a conservative majority, potentially.
yeah, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, it depends.
you-
I mean, but the
not
thing is,
necessarily.
would you be in favor of an 11 court expansion?
No, I
Right, so let's-
wouldn't because
so what-
hell,
so-
I'm not even. Hold on. Can I just say? I just want to say I'm not even sure if I'm in favor of expanding it by one.
You just
Okay?
said you
I'm gonna
were.
walk back that position.
So,
No, stop. I said that it would be justified morally, but that doesn't mean you should do it.
what do
Because
you
the
take justification to
Republicans will
mean
come in
if you're not
and
talking
they
about
will
legal
do it.
justification?
Pisco, we've already
This
corrected
is
numerous
crazy.
times.
No, no,
This
let's
is the
get
problem,
clarity.
is
So-
that
so
like,
my
it's not
argument-
crazy. Hold on,
it is
no,
crazy.
No, listen. We have gone over this numerous times. When I went over like the baby analogy, where like we're giving arguments against what it is you're saying, and we're saying we think this makes sense. You could be correct on this, but we don't think this is a good idea. And you don't engage with those arguments. You just keep pushing more of the same
Shut
exact
the fuck up.
argument
I'm going to
instead of
tell you what I
ever
mean by
refuting what
justification,
it is
okay?
that either
Tom,
one of us are
Tom,
saying.
shut the fuck up. I'm telling you what I mean by justification. When I say something is justified in this context, I mean it's a good idea that we should do, okay? So when I say it's justified, I just mean that it's a good idea we should
We've
do
already,
it.
yes, we've already said that's
okay.
not what we mean.
Okay, so
Yes,
why
we've
don't you
already
just
said it.
onboard? So when I'm talking about justification, let's just change. If the word justification is tripping you up, we'll just remove the word justification to a thing Democrats
It's not
ought
tripping us
do.
up. It's tripping you up.
It's so no. What you're doing is
Yeah,
equivocating.
I don't think that
what
you
you're
ought
doing,
to
what
it,
you're
'cause
doing
it
with
would have bad consequences.
so what you're doing is
Yes, use ought.
what you're doing is equivocating on justification to mean legal justification, which is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about in terms of justification is a thing that ought be done. What is good to do, all right? And what is good is what ought be done, all right? So that's what I mean here. And if that is tripping you up, that usage of the term that way, why are you
This is
like that?
actually
What's your
crazy.
reaction?
I didn't disagree with you on justification. You disagree with us
equivocating
on
there.
our use of justification. This is fucking gaslighting you. You literally just said that you don't know what we mean when we say justification. We've
when
clarified
you
it for
say
you 3 or 4 times
no,
now.
I
And
actually
now you're saying
so
you
Tom,
guys
Tom,
are being
Tom,
weird about
Tom,
my
Tom,
use
Tom,
of justification.
define
No, we're
justification.
not. You're being weird about our use of justification.
Tom, define what you mean by justification other than what someone ought to do. Now,
Yeah, that it could be good.
that it could be good?
would be
That's
good.
what you mean by justified?
Would
It
not-
could be good?
Yes, it wouldn't be wrong. Yes, that you could do it and it would be right.
So when you say something is justified, you mean
Wait.
it's possible for it to be good. That's all you mean by justification?
Yeah, or that it's right.
logically
Yeah,
possible that it be good.
It's
I think what
Yeah.
I see going on here
Okay,
is that there's-
wait a second. So you're totally fucked. You know that definition is cooked because I'll tell you, is it possible, right, to buy a lottery ticket and for it to turn out good?
Yeah.
Pisco,
Okay.
do you not
So wait.
there's
Stop trying to
pragmatically
bail
a
him out.
reason to
Stop
not
trying
do
to bail
something,
him out.
even if it's
Stop trying to bail
morally
him out.
justified? No,
Stop
because
trying to
I'm
bail him out.
fucking agreeing
Stop
with
trying to
him.
bail him out.
You're
Stop trying to bail him out.
narrow
So
fucking
you just gave an
definition
account
because you
for
can
justification.
force us into a box.
So no. So Tom said, oh, you said we don't. Yeah, I don't understand what you mean by justification, and you just gave an account for it, and you said what I mean by justified is that it could be good. And I'm asking you, could it be good to buy a lottery ticket?
I guess I meant. Like,
Is this
more-
hard for
lottery
you?
tickets
Oh, you
is
could win the
morally
fucking lottery.
neutral.
Morally
Wait,
good.
Can you stop for a second?
I'm correcting it because you're being purposefully obtuse. I'm saying morally good. It'd be morally good. I said morally right. Now you're sticking on what I said. One of the 5 things that I gave was could be. All of the others were saying it was good, it is right, but I'm saying it's morally
James,
right.
we have to write this down. So I'm asking you one more time. I'm going to write this down, Tom. No weaseling. When you say justification, give me your account for that. And don't change it, all right? What do you mean by
Can I
justification?
give an
Yes, I'm saying
example that might help you understand?
Can you
that
answer
this
a
would be
fucking question
acceptable?
instead of answer the question? What do you mean by justified?
I'm saying that it would be acceptable.
That it would be acceptable. It would be acceptable.
Morally.
And when you say
good,
acceptable, when you
morally
say
acceptable,
when you say that it would be morally acceptable, you mean that it would be morally good, right? Acceptable here is standing in for good or permissible.
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What is
So
this?
when you say that core
Why
packing is
terms of, like,
Pisco is going down?
so when you say that core packing is justified, which you said, that's another. I can substitute
don't agree
justification
with
for
it.
it's permissible, it's acceptable, right?
Yes, in terms of like the self-defense aspect of it, that we would be justified.
So you
in
grant
return
that core
fire,
packing is
and
in
that's
your own
fine. So
terms. So you grant that core packing is in your own terms permissible, morally permissible.
Yes.
Okay, I take that as a concession on the debate.
Really?
That's
so
the
you
debate.
okay? So you're a fucking moron. Then that is.
You
the
just said
debate.
core
You're
packing
fucking
is
retarded
permissible.
because What is? Yes,
Morally
of course,
permissible.
but pragmatically, it doesn't mean that it's a good idea. It doesn't mean that it is the best thing to do. We went over this
No,
at
I
the
think
very
the
beginning.
Iraq
Now,
War
we
was
do
morally
think we went over this at the
justified,
very
but pragmatically
fucking
a
beginning that we
terrible
were saying
idea.
All right.
the best thing to do, and I gave the baby analogy. We said it doesn't mean that it is the best thing to do, and that there can be some things that would cause more harm that could be justified, but there are other things that would cause less harm that would also be justified. That we would rather do this, and that to do the thing that would cause more harm would be fucking stupid in that scenario, and you're totally ignoring that on purpose. So we
it's-
go over the same thing for the fucking 5th
Wait,
time
wait,
in a
Tom,
row,
Tom,
so
Tom,
your
Tom, Tom.
baby
So let me
brain
take your
finally
view.
Get it through. Did you write
Let
it
me
down?
take your view.
Did you write it down?
Let me take your
Did you
view.
write it
So,
down?
so
Yeah?
you think?
Did
So
you
you
write it
think?
down?
So I just want to be clear. So you think that it's morally permissible to take an action that leads to a whole slew of consequences that are structural and integral and that might lead to civil war, and you said that's morally permissible?
Yes, I think the action in and of itself can be morally permissible, but not pragmatically optimal.
So it's morally permissible to do an action that you think that leads to like civil war.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course, it's morally permissible.
think
On
civil
whose
war
notion
would
of moral
ever be
permissibility is that?
permissible?
That makes no sense whatsoever. Of course, it's not morally permissible to take an
Do you
action
not
that's going to
think
lead to civil
Civil
war.
War would ever be morally permissible?
I think civil war itself is sometimes morally permissible, but not if you can avoid it.
Okay, well, this is one of the reasons that I wouldn't want to do that, is because I do think.
But you
this
said
sort
it's
of
more.
thing
Then
would
what do you
lead
mean
to
by
a
morally
revolution in that
permissible?
part.
If you're gonna if you think it's permissible to take an action which leads to this set of consequences that ultimately ground down into civil war, in what sense is that permissible? You're going to permit a civil
I-
war that you could avoid?
May I offer an example?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go
I
for
don't
it.
know why I don't know why I'm asking for permission. I'm the damn host. So my understanding
Might
of
have
this,
to
of this
start muting people, by the way, if you want to get a word in, because we're all
You
screaming.
know, how
Wow.
much room
By
to make for
people,
the
you mean
spiciness
Pisco?
for the passion. It's a constant internal debate here on the show. I want to make space for people to make the arguments and not feel inhibited. I also want to make sure we're having a good discussion. So I think there's been relatively decent self-governance. If we could avoid talking over each other as best we can, that would be excellent. Now, as far as this idea of something being justified but unoptimal, there's a couple things I could think of. One would be, let's say that somebody calls a black person the N-word in public.
Okay.
I think that most people would be, if that person then got immediately punched in the face, I think that there are people who would be like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have punched him in the face, but like, I also kind of get it. I think that's
Yeah,
what I think of when I think
deserved.
of like.
Wait, what does
Yeah, well,
deserve? Wait, that doesn't make any sense. These are incomprehensible notions to me. So would you want that to occur or not?
No, it's just the same
So
as
do
like if
you-
somebody raped me, I would if I raped them back, they would deserve it. But would it be wrong, like in a more like legal sense? Should they be punished for it? Yes, of course. But that's not the same thing.
What is your
Like,
notion
these are-
of
these are
deserve, other than
different
what we
scenarios.
think is morally okay, morally
Pisco,
acceptable?
do you not?
I think
Like
Pisco,
tit
do
for
you not?
tat.
I think
Pisco,
it
I'm not
speaks
trying to be
a.
hold on. Can I just? I'm not trying to be an asshole when I ask you this question. Do you not understand the concept of pragmatism and how like it applies to morality?
Of course, but I understand that like consequences, I'm sure map onto people's intuitions about morality and what's okay and what's not okay. That's precisely why I'm asking the question: why would you think it's permissible to do something that you know leads to very unpragmatic situations? Now, Tom has said that court packing is permissible, but he also thinks that it will lead to insane consequences. And I'm asking what notion of permissibility allows for that on his own view. That doesn't make any sense.
Keep in mind that our permissible that our we think it would be morally justified thing applies to adding like one seat, because that was where the
Okay,
injury was. Not
just imagine it's just one
expanding
seat.
it to
He just needs to
13.
say moral
Let's just limit it to one
permissibility.
seat for now. That would be a court expansion. Let's just only talk about one seat. And he
Yeah,
says,
I agree. I'm just saying.
he says that would be morally acceptable, but in some ways not optimal. Okay, if he thinks it's not optimal, he wouldn't. That's okay. I mean, he can say that, but he still thinks it's better than the status quo. I would assume under a notion of moral acceptability is that it's better than the status quo. Okay, maybe it's not optimal, but why would you say it's bad? Or would you say it's bad? Why is this hard? I don't understand. Like,
Was that?
so Tom, there's a notion of
Right.
moral acceptability that you're
you're-
offering
what-
on the
you're
table. Okay,
asking, okay.
You're on the table is a notion that court packing is acceptable, but not something we should do. Okay, it's not something we should do, even though it's acceptable. And the reason we shouldn't do it is because it leads to all of this bad outcomes. But then, what do you mean by saying it's morally acceptable?
Well, I think all choices could lead to bad outcomes, some bad outcomes. I think all of them could have some bad outcomes. Again, I'm wanting the most optimal choice. That is what I've said numerous times now.
I'm not denying that you say you want the most optimal choice. I want the most optimal choice. I'm trying to make sense of the phrases that you've used. You've said that it would be morally acceptable, and that's your version of justified, to do a court pack of one seat. I'm asking, what was that a concession at all? What was that? What did you mean when you said it was morally acceptable to do a one-person court pack?
It's us saying that we understand that there was an injury, but that we can't remedy
Yes,
it the
saying
way that
that
you're
it
talking
would be
about,
deserved.
because that would be bad, because it would lead to bad places.
Okay, so that's what you meant by morally acceptable, is that when you say morally acceptable, it's indexing to the injury that's causing the thing to occur, not to the action that I'm telling you
Yes,
is
a
or is
tit
not
for
morally
tat.
acceptable? So
Tit for tat, yes.
So if someone killed your parent and you go over and kill their parent, you would say that's morally acceptable.
I would say that it's deserved. I probably wouldn't say morally acceptable, no.
That's the distinction you have to know. I'm going to call you on. What do you mean by deserved in that context? Other than it's what ought occur.
So
It means
in this case,
fuck around
with
and
the court
find
pack-
out.
Hang on. Yeah, Tom, if you could.
But again, I do
How does that not apply to
do think
Republicans?
that I am saying that, like, yes, this is something that one seat, yes, this would be a thing that they would deserve, but I don't like the outcomes.
Do you understand my
I don't
question?
know
Do you understand my
what
question?
else.
Do you understand what I'm saying? You're using different
Yes, you're
notions
fighting
of
me on
moral
semantics
good.
instead of trying to understand what it is that I'm saying. You're
What's
fighting me on
happening?
semantics right now.
What's
I'm trying
happening
to get back
here?
to the actual
What's
point
happening
because
here
you're making
is
it about
what's
semantics,
happening
which you
here.
fight on a totally
What's happening here is
unnecessary point.
what's happening here is my notion of justification is totally like obvious to people. Justification means good. Something is justified in this context, not in the legal sense, in this context, by saying it's something that ought occur. It's something that's good, right? That's what I mean by justification. And here, there's an equivocation, right? You're using different definitions for things. What's the difference between morally acceptable versus justified versus deserved? And all of these are weasel words that you're using to try to hide the ball. I want to know what you mean by deserved. You said that's different than morally acceptable, which is different than justification. And I want to know what that is, because I don't want any more equivocation.
Wait, did I say that? I don't think I said.
Okay, so I'm going to start fresh. This is fucking pointless. So my argument understands a notion of justification that means good, okay? It means it should occur, okay? That's the notion of justification I want to use. Is that okay? Can we use that notion of justification?
Yes, we're not fighting you on justification. You're fighting
Okay.
us. Yes,
so
we can use that.
So on your view, therefore, it would not be justified, right, to do a court pack, because court packing would be not good.
I don't think it is the most optimal thing. No, I would not. I would not think it's good.
So that's the ground on which I want to fight the argument, is whether or not it's something we ought do, something that's good. Okay. So now we go to the argument. The argument is formally valid, and I'm asking which of the premises.
Hold on. Wait. Well, I mean, I also reject premise 5. There was no reason to expect severe consequence cascade.
Let's go there.
That's our entire argument.
Okay, so what are the bases to believe that there's a severe consequence cascade as a result of doing a court expansion? Let's start with 1.
Because you're dealing with the Republicans. In fact, it's funny. All the state Supreme Court expansions that you pointed to, they were all done by Republicans. Yes.
Yeah.
In like Georgia and Arizona. And why would you want to give the Republicans like an excuse to do, like, why would you want to escalate to that level
excuse to
so
do
that they
what
would
they
then
would
be able to do
do
this thing back?
anyway?
And you know that they're fucking going to. This Republican Party, this MAGA Republican Party, these norm violating fucks who don't care about like norms or anything, why would they not clap back?
So I'm asking you a
They're
question.
the ones
Is
who've done this shit
why
at the
would we
state
not clap
level.
back?
right? So they don't need an excuse, right? Is that what you just said?
At the federal level, I think that they probably would, and they also right now don't feel like they have any reason to. And the reason why they don't feel like they have any reason to is because they have a conservative Supreme Court.
So the processor, but the limitation by which they're going to act has to do with the status quo. If the status quo is in their interest, yeah, they're not going to unless they really overestimate their current position. And sometimes they are able to do this even when they have a majority on their courts. And when they do that, by the way, there isn't a breakdown in the rule of law or whatever. But you just said it, right? They don't need an excuse to do this if it's in their interest. You just said it. So why is there really, like, what is the basis to believe there's going to be a severe consequence cascade as a result of this action?
Because you're giving them the excuse by taking them, by like making it harder for them, by taking control of the court away from them.
Yep.
If you do it, like, if you bump it up to 13, which again is what you want to do.
Yeah. So like, isn't it better, right, to have a situation in which the Supreme Court, if this is the outcome, oscillates some of the time to Democrats, some of the time to Republicans, even assuming this is the case, right, which I don't think necessarily would be.
But it won't oscillate.
Isn't
They'll
that better?
expand it again because there'll be no way for them to remove the
What
justices
is more
that the
preferable?
Democrats previously appointed.
What is more preferable? Having a permanent Republican skewed conservative Supreme Court, or having one in which it's variable?
But it's not going to be variable.
Answer the question.
It's ever expanding.
Can you answer the question? What
Honestly,
is preferable?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I think that it would be more preferable to fucking find another, either A, find another way to do this, or B, like wait it out just like the fucking conservatives did in order to gain control of the Supreme Court in the first place, instead of trying to like engage in any sort of court packing previously, because they were never the ones who wanted to do it previously.
But they didn't
like
wait it
in the
out.
modern
They
era. It was the Democrats under
broke the
FDR on the
rules.
federal level who did that.
Would it be
Like, I just
preferable
don't-
to have a permanent, by which I mean long time, conservative Supreme Court that was stacked through?
I said yes. I would rather have that than have an ever-expanding,
And the
constant
ans-
bitch fight.
and
We're going to add more
why?
justices to the Supreme Court.
And the answer is, why is that preferable?
Because
Or the question.
the Supreme Court is going to become fucking meaningless. It's literally just going to become a
Says
rubber
who?
stamp to let the president
Says
do whatever
who?
the fuck he wants.
Who says it's going to be meaningless? Why would it be meaningless? Why would you think that?
Okay, so you don't think that the Supreme Court's going to become a fucking joke if it ends up being expanded
have
like
no reason to
100
think that.
justices because
Well-
of this constant back and forth?
Well, hang on a second. So
You just don't care
I
about
don't.
the potentiality of how much of a mess that would be?
I have no basis to believe that the kind of majorities that you would need to, undo a lot of this. It's actually sometimes difficult to get, a unified caucus to push these kinds of reforms, and there's often a lot of resistance. So I don't actually think that it's going to be expanded to 100, 1,000. I think that's like a ridiculous notion that'll happen in short order.
I'm
But
not
even
saying that
even
the
putting that aside,
Democrats are gonna do that. I'm saying that what'll happen is we'll bump it up to 13, and then the Republicans will get in, and they'll add like more in order to be able to retain the majority, and then the Democrats will get in, and they'll add more in order to be able to retain the majority. And it'll just keep going back and forth forever, ad infinitum, and it's fucking bullshit until finally somebody goes, "Oh my God, this is so fucking stupid. It's time to amend the Constitution and pick a fucking number."
Yeah, so I don't actually think that, even if that were the case, it would be tit for tat for that. But there's a reason to think that that's worse than the current status quo. I just don't, like, what is the basis to believe that would be worse than the current status quo?
Because because the Supreme Court is supposed to be a check on the president and on Congress in terms of, but especially on the president.
Why would it stop doing that?
And why would because the president's going to come in and he's going to pick a bunch of justices that are going to like politically agree with him in order to be able to retain the majority. Because again,
like
all
Trump
this goes
did,
back to
right?
we're mad that the court has a
Trump
supreme,
did,
a
right?
majority.
Now Trump picked the justices in his term, right? Term 1.
Yeah, like Obama did too. Obama also did that.
So that's on all fours.
Yeah.
So what is it about expanding the Supreme Court
but
that's
there's a difference between doing that and expanding the court.
Why? Why is it
because
different?
you're trying to change it just so that you can make it so that the court agrees with you, and then the next president's going to come in and do the same thing.
That's what's motivating every president whenever they nominate anyone, is to have someone who they can have a legacy and that will largely agree with their views.
Yeah, but they're only talking about like 1 or 2 justices. You're talking about looking at the court and being like, I don't like the way that the court.
Wait, in this context, we're just talking about a 1 justice Supreme Court expansion. So I thought I made that clear. So right now we're only talking about a 1 court expansion.
Yeah, but that's not okay. Yeah, but that doesn't even work anyway, because then you have
Why?
10, and then there's going to be
All right.
tiebreakers.
Okay, two. Fine, 2. Fine. Let's do 2 then. A 2 per. That's really where the math leads you. It's really 2. I don't know why that's hard to grasp, but it is 2. So let's take the 2. So
No, I disagree with this idea that there were 2 injuries, but that's a separate thing.
No, the injury constitutes 2 justices. All right, that's just math. That's math. James tried to explain it. I don't know why it's lost on you guys. That's the math of it. But even just put that aside for now. All right, the 2 justices. Why is it that
it's just not
intuitive?
It's just all of these. Kalinda and Tom are smart. If they're having trouble with one of these things, then your average Republican voter is going to have even more trouble with it. You know, if we have these sorts of disagreements on our side of the aisle, then it seems to me that it's completely rational that a great amount of the American voting populace will be swayed by this kind of argument that, well, now that the Democrats have done it, the Republicans are fully justified to do it. I think the Merrick Garland situation is they almost got a pass on it because it's a complicated thing, and it's hard to show someone who's disengaged from politics how that's an injury.
Okay,
it's obvious to everyone here that it's an injury.
Is what we're here to do? I'm only allowed to deploy arguments that are intuitive to the American people. If that were the case, I'll be like, 13 circuits, 13 justices. Makes sense. We need them. Like, I thought we were here to debate.
I mean, I actually agree with that. I just don't want to do it right now. Because
we didn't
have
you agree with court expansion?
Reasons. No, listen. Okay, do you want me to? Do you want me to explain a proposal of how you could do court expansion without being like a partisan hack?
Really,
about it?
no. I want you to address the argument. Which of the premises you disagree with?
I told you.
Yeah, you said there's no reason to expect a severe consequence cascade. I'm like, okay, what is the severe consequence? You said, well, then it's just going to be a rubber stamp for the president. I'm asking, why would that be the case? Why would you expect that?
Because the president's going to pick justices who agree with him, and he's going to be able to pick way more than he otherwise would. And the purpose is to expand the court in order to be able to make it so that the justices will rubber stamp.
That rationale is always present. That rationale was present with.
That's what FDR
Trump
wanted to do when he wanted to expand the court. That was the whole point.
A president will always nominate. A president will always nominate a justice who's likely to agree with him. That's always present.
Yeah, but
right?
but he's not always creating seats to do it. He's replacing a vacant seat. He's filling a vacant seat.
What difference does that make? You're saying that the justices. You're saying the justices, as a result of expansion, they're going to be different sort of justices that are more unlikely to be resistance to the presidency.
I mean, they're going to politically agree with the president.
No shit, but that's always online. That's always online. The president always has that in a consideration.
Yeah, it is, but there's a you literally don't see the difference between I'm going to add more people to this committee in order to make it more agree